Okay. Roll call?
Mr. Simmons?
Here.
Mr. Buttacavoli? Here. Ms. McKenzie? Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Samayoa?
Here. Let's move to item 3A, resolution approving authorizing the refinancing of the 211 COP B Street project. Recommendation is to approve resolution PFA 2019-1, authorizing refinancing the 2011 COP B Street development project and approving the documents and action required to complete such financing. This presentation comes from our interim finance director, Mr. Sinsky. Jennifer?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to present Bud Levine. He's our municipal financer with Wolf, Hansen and Company, and he'll be making the presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. It's a pleasure to be here again. Always nice when we're able to present a possibility for the city to save some money. I was here in January, if you'll remember, where we did a study session and we talked about the possibility of refunding the 2011 D Street property and doing something with the pension obligation bonds, which we'll talk about later. But this meeting now is for the refunding of the pension obligation bond of the 2011 D Street property. To give you a quick, I know we've gone over this a couple of times, once at that study session and once at the ad hoc committee meeting that I had with Council Member McKenzie and Buttacavoli. And so we've gone over this several times. But to give a quick review, in 2011, the city issued a $7 million COP that refunded the original 2006 COP to acquire the B Street property. These current bonds, the 2011 bonds, are refundable now. They're actually technically refundable in 2021, but bond law allows us to refund them in an advance basis, and so we can take advantage of the very low interest rates right now, refund it, set up an escrow to pay off the 2011 bonds in 2021. The lease properties under the original 2011 issue were the B Street project itself and the Bryant Field Ballpark. Now, what we're going to do is set up a lease transaction very similar to a COP because we're going to do a private placement. We have Brandis Tallman as a placement agent who's going to prepare an RFP ready to go out now to 17 different banks that are going to propose how they are going to, what kind of terms they would present for acquiring the lease transaction. The lease properties in this transaction will be the Riverfront Park, will be the fire station, and Bryant Ballpark. That will allow the B Street property to be completely free and clear of the lease requirements of the 2011 issue and be able to be used in any way capacity that the city would like. The lease payments that are going to be generated through the transaction will be sold to the successful bank, and the bank will take that money, send it to the escrow to pay off the 2011 bonds, pay the cost of issuance, and the 2011 bonds now COPs will go away. And I know that came up as an issue or a question in the work study. There will be no more requirements for the city to make payments on the 2011 COPs. The only requirements will be to make the lease payments on the new 2019 issue. In addition, there is currently a project fund that has not been completely used, held by the trustee on the 2011 COPs. It has approximately $143,000 available in it. It was designed to be used for development or studies involving what to do with the B Street property. There were two choices we had when we put together the structure. One was to bring that $143,000 in as part of the refunding. The other is to release it to the city for continued use involving the B Street property. and in discussion with staff, that was the decision to be made. So right now, the structure would call for the $143,000 to be sent to the city, to be used by the city for those purposes. Let's go, okay. Now, let's take a look at what the lease transaction is going to look like. The par amount of the leases is going to be $6,850,000. There's a current reserve fund of $500,000 at the trustee. And by the way, I will go into this a little bit later, but the actual amount that's on deposit now, we have subsequently found out since we put this together, is $600,000, which is going to actually increase the savings. But based on the $500,000, there would be a total of $7,350,000 in the sources of funds for paying off the B Street property, COP. $7,219,000 will be put in an escrow to make the remaining payments until 2021 and to pay off the 2011 B Street COPs. Next page. This is something new that we are required to show when we're getting a refunding approved. It's a Section 5852 disclosure that the state of California now requires. Even though we do not have the final numbers because the lease has not been sold yet, it'll be sold, as I said, through the RFP, request for proposals, from the various banks. We have done an analysis and have come up with our best estimate of what the refunding is going to look like when it is passed, when it is priced. The true interest cost looks like it's going to be 4.35. Keep in mind that the 2011 bonds carried COPs carried an interest rate of 6.35 to 7.88, going to be replaced with an interest rate of approximately 4.35. The financing charge, which is all the costs involved in issuing the lease, are $130,000. The net proceeds then will be $7,220,000. The sum of all the payments that are going to be made under the lease, $9,854,000. This will produce projected savings based on these numbers of around $1.6 million over the remaining 18 years of the lease for the city. In other words, your debt service payments on the new lease are going to be $1.6 million less than what you're currently paying on the 2011 if you had left the 2011 in place. We have to also show the present value of savings. This simply is taking the $1,594,000 that's going to be realized by the city over the life of the issue, 18 years, and putting that into the perspective of what is the current value of that today. If you were to be paid cash for that $1.6 million or roughly in savings, and that amount is $1,148,000. Remember though, the real cash savings here will be, and I'll show that in a minute, $1,594,000, assuming the lease is sold at the levels that we are anticipating. And there's another calculation we have to do, which is to take the reserve fund cash that we've brought into the financing, and for calculation purposes, take that and deduct that from the net present value. That's a total of $649,000. That represents a 10% savings on the face value of the 2011 COPs. You will see later when you're going to look at the debt management policy that will need to be approved that the state recommends as a good business practice that that net present value be at least 3%. That's the important takeaway from this. You're supposed to have at least 3%. You're going to have 10% on this transaction. Lastly, on the next page, cost of issuance. Question came up at the ad hoc committee about what's our estimated breakdown of that cost of issuance, and I said I would bring that back to the council, and here it is. Here's the breakdown as we know it now of what the various costs are going to be that total that $130,000. We do have a miscellaneous of $7,500. I think these costs are fairly accurate as to what they will actually be. There may be a slight variance. Investors' counsel is something that will be the attorney representing the buyer bank, the investment bank that is going to be buying the lease. That can range anywhere from 10 to 15,000. We're using an estimate of 10. We have the 7,500 in the miscellaneous to cover that. The last page on this is then what the financing will look like, assuming we sold at that you notice the interest rate, 4.35%. You'll see on the left with the 4.35% and the principal amount of the lease that's going to be paid back over the 18 years, and for the fourth column over is the new debt service. If you look down at the bottom, the new debt service is $9,854,000. If you look at the next column over, that's the existing debt service from the 2011 COP. You will notice that that's $11,449,000. The difference is $1,594,000. If you look at the yearly savings, there's a very interesting dynamic on the way the numbers will fall and the payment dates, but there will be around $474,000 of the savings will be realized in the first year, and after that, it's a fairly level $65,000. I mentioned earlier that the reserve fund is $600,000 and not $500,000. It means that around $100,000 in bonds less in leases will be issued, and therefore the savings will be probably another $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year. So at this point, by the way, I did not introduce Rob Pancrantz, who's our senior analyst and director of operations, and he's getting some field experience by joining me on this trip to one of my favorite cities. So
Thank you. Questions from council members?
Just an observation,
Yes.
if I might. We're going to get off that $647,000 a year payment now on
Yes.
existing,
Yes.
and it'll be 500 and some thousand.
correct. And hopefully, the interest rates are being amazingly accommodating right now. I don't want to get too excited about it, but from the time I did these numbers to today, that rate is probably going to be closer to 4% rather than 4.35. Now, what happens with tariffs and all the stuff that's going on economically, that could change things. We want to get to this as quickly as we can, but I use the more conservative numbers. But the answer to your question is yes, and hopefully the payment will even be lower.
One other question, using Beckworth Riverfront Park, including the sewer ponds and all, collateral on this note?
Yes, in other words, that's the
Why was
full-
that selected, may I ask?
Yes, because we needed to have what is acceptable asset for the banks that are going to be doing this. And they like having assets that are usable by the city and that are significant. And that's why of the available assets that you had, once we eliminated the B Street property, which never was a favorite asset of the original buyers that actually bought the COPs, we came to the conclusion that those were the best to use.
Well, that's a good choice. I'm just wondering, will they require any improvements on that by the city?
No. It's actually, nothing needs to be done to it. It's simply going to be a leased asset that creates the cash flow for being able to generate the sale.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any questions? Go ahead, sir.
Just make a comment because Vice Mayor and I sat in on the ad hoc, which it's very difficult to understand everything that's being said here. And we got way into the depths of it.
Yes, we did.
But to simplify all of it, it's, it's just the interest rate change for the most part. The fact that rates are lower than they've ever been right now is where we benefit out of this whole thing. And then moving our collateral gives us the ability to do what we want with B Street, which could be many different forms. But that really is kind of simplifying it down to maybe some that are listening that don't. It's complicated. It's complicated.
But you both did an excellent job and asked a lot of good questions, and it was a very interesting, involved discussion at that meeting. And obviously, you took the right takeaway from it. So glad to hear that commented back. So,
Any other questions, comments, Vice Mayor?
And just comment, you answered my question, because I was going to ask what the possible variance would be on the interest rate, and you told us it could possibly go down even lower than, and
I mean,
not
it could
go
go
up.
either way, but the trend appears to be down, and at least for the right now, I would worry about interest rates by the end of the year, but for right now, I think we're still in a very, very accommodating interest rate market for these type of refundings, and that's why many cities are really rushing to take advantage of that while the rates are what they are.
Thank you.
Sure. Are there any questions on the documents at all? I think there was a pretty good explanation in the report that accompanied this.
Correct.
So.
Any questions on the presentation or the documents? Just want to clarify. So this debt is going to just take the place of what we currently owed, and it's not a 20-year debt. It's whatever number of payments we have left.
18 years remaining, yes.
It's 18 years remaining. So
Yeah,
that's
we purposely did not extend the term at all. We wanted to keep it equal to or even less than if we could, but the numbers worked out the best as an equal to, so correct.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I don't see why this is bad news.
Money, 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 money.
Any comments from the public on this matter? Seeing none, so we're gonna move, I'm gonna entertain a motion to approve PF 2019-1 as a public finance authority, and then do you want me to adjourn and go back as a city, or are we gonna take this on as a city later? As a city? Okay. So we'll take two actions, is that what you need? Okay. So we have to take two resolutions, one as a public finance authority and another one as a council. So I'd like to entertain a motion, unless there's any other comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve resolution PFA 2019-01.
I make a motion to approve.
Second? Let's move it.
Motion by Hudson, second by Simmons. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Now we're going to adjourn to our city council meeting?
Do you want to add anything?
Second motion.
Okay, so now I'd like to entertain a motion to approve resolution 2019-2024 as council, authorizing the refinancing of the 2011 COP. Motion by Vice Mayor. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bartolowoli. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0. Now we're done. Now we'd like to adjourn to our regular meeting, starting now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So glad to get that B Street thing off my plate.
Do you want to switch?
Portion of our show.
Yeah, clear the clutter a little bit, you know? It's just like...
So, I'd like to call, special meeting of City Council to order. This is a regular meeting to order today, Tuesday, May 14th, 7:15. Roll call.
Mr. Simmons?
Here?
Mr. Buttakovoli? Here. Ms. McKenzie? Here. Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Samayoa?
Here. Thank you. With that, I'd like to ask everyone to stand and please join me on the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, whoops. Get my sponge up there. I sit tight.
This is who's getting the nurse proclamation. They're going to be the second.
So we have multiple proclamations and presentations, and I'll read them right now. We'll have a proclamation celebrating National Police Week in the city of Marysville. We'll also proclaim National Nurses Week in the city of Marysville. We'll have oath of office and pinning ceremony for fire engine engineer Matt Lichtenstein, and oath of office and spinning ceremony for firefighter Cameron Walsh. Now it's getting easier names. Thank you, Chief. Also, I have an oath of office and pinning ceremony for firefighter Michael Sinak. And F, sorry, Chief, you'll help me. Thank you. An oath of office and pinning ceremony for fire engineer and prevention specialist Andrew Hall.
That's a total fire department, isn't it?
Yes, sir, how are you? Thanks for being here again. Chief, who's Chief of Police, Sachs, are you coming down here with your crew, or how are we doing this?
Yeah, they ran out for some calls, but they'll be back, hopefully.
Let's do nurses then.
There you go, do nurses. Yeah, her fire.
Do we have Miss Cindy Gordon here from Aventus? Hi.
Terry Howard, nurse, he's a nurse.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to present you with this proclamation. I'd like to read the proclamation. Whereas the nearly 3.1 million nurses in the United States comprise our nation's largest healthcare professions. And whereas the depth and breadth of nursing profession meets the difference in emerging healthcare needs of the American population in a wide range of settings. Whereas professional nursing has been demonstrated to be an indispensable component in the safety and quality of care of all patients. And whereas a greater number of qualified nurses will be needed in the future to meet the increasingly complex needs of healthcare consumers in the community, the cost-effective, safe, and quality health care services provided by nurses will be an ever more important component of the U.S. healthcare delivery system in the future. Whereas the American Nurses Association has declared the week of May 6th through the 12th of 2019 as National Nurses Week. Now there be a resolve that I, Mayor Ricky Samayoa, and the City Council of the City of Marysville do hereby declare May 6th through 12th, 2019 as National Nurses Week in the City of Marysville. The City Council asks all of our residents to join us in honor the many nurses who care for all of us, not only during National Nurses Week, but at every opportunity throughout the year. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you very much, and on behalf of all of the nursing staff, and actually all the nurses in this wonderful county, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to serve you, and we're very thankful for your recognition.
Let's take a picture. I know Linda's here for that.
I don't want to get in front of that screen, so point this way. All right, thank you.
We have some officers here. Please come up. Thank you, sir. How are you, sir? Thank you, sir. We got the pretty ones here today. So, recognition of all your work, we have this proclamation declaring the week of May 13th through the 17th as National Police Week in the City of Marysville. Whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15 as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the calendar week in which May 15 falls as National Police Week. Whereas the members of the Police Department of the City of Marysville play an important role in preserving the rights and freedoms of the citizens of our community. Whereas it's important to all citizens know and understand the sacrifice, duties, and responsibilities of their police department, and that members of our department recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, protecting them against violence or disorder, and protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. Whereas the City of Marysville urges citizens to join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their communities, have established for themselves the right the rights and security of all citizens. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Ricky Samayo, and the City Council of the City of Marysville do hereby proclaim the week of May 13th through the 17th, 2019 as National Police Week in the City of Marysville. Let's give them a hand, everyone.
Well, I'm glad you guys all came to see me. Just kidding. You know, this week's very special to us because we get to honor all of our current police officers that are out there on the line of duty every day, but also remember the ones that laid down the ultimate sacrifice. And so the police officer memorials at Sacramento all this week with the ceremonies going on every day. We'll be at Yuba City Police Department tomorrow at 10 a.m. for a police officer memorial for all the officers and deputies fallen in the line of duty in the Yuba and Sutter community. So you're all more than welcome to, you're all invited at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and we'll be there for that. We've been doing events throughout the week. Had cake and ice cream yesterday. We had a barbecue today. For some of our teams, we'll have a barbecue for the rest of the guys tomorrow. A bunch of the POA members' spouses got together for some gifts for the guys. I can't work for a better group of people. I'm super proud to represent them and the community as a whole. They're just super dedicated. Even though we're shorthanded, they come in every day. They deal with the worst of the worst stuff. We had quite a few of them in the back here to honor, help us honor our firefighters that are coming in today too, but they had to run out for a call for service. So thank you very much for being here and supporting us and supporting our fellow brothers in the fire department. And just thank you for all your guys' support and what you guys do for us in the community.
Good job. Okay.
Who's your replacement there, Mayor?
Chief, I'll just let you do your job here. Oh, I'm gonna act as a Dana White.
Yeah.
So let's bring Lichtenstein, fire engineer, sir. Come here. Here, take an oath.
Okay. I thought I was nervous. All right, can you raise your right hand? Do you, Matt Lichtenstein, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the Constitution of the State of California and the Constitution of the United States of America, and that you will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I will.
Congratulations.
I just wanted to stand and admire that smile for just a couple of minutes. First of all, congratulations to Matt Lichtenstein. Just a little bit about him. He was born and raised in Boston. He moved here when he was 18, went through the Yuba Fire Academy and completed that. He was hired here with the Marysville Fire Department in 2017, and prior to that he spent time down in a much larger fire department in Kern County. So he comes to us with a great deal of knowledge and experience. Matt is the president of the Firefighters Association currently, and he's one of the hazmat Weisschmerz team specialists for the team. He also is in charge of our department radio programs, and his hobbies are, believe it or not, being a fireman. Watching and playing sports. He's a very avid Sacramento Kings fan. He goes there quite often. And then pinning him tonight will be Fire Captain Aaron Vandevort.
You got a knife?
Need a medic? We got yeah. Not to break it, tough guy. And I'm sure we're going to see blood after this.
Am I holding up for this one?
Cameron Walsh. Cameron, how are you? Good.
Raise your right hand. Do you, Cameron Walsh, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the Constitution of the State of California and the Constitution of the United States of America, and that you will take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I will.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Cameron Walsh is, first of all, he's very young. He's 21 years old. So we've got him for a very long career. He has been very dedicated to our department. He was born and raised in Roseville, and he graduated Sierra College in 2017. He then came to us to do his internship with the Marysville Fire Department, and I think he fell in love with us. I'm not sure 100%, but he has been completely, you won't find a more dedicated person out there who is very energetic, motivated, and just loves everything about the fire service. For 7 months, he helped us when we were down in staffing to cover a firefighter position where he really got to put all of his internship and training to use. So we were very grateful that he helped step in with our other career staff. After that, he tested and we hired him as a full-time firefighter position. His hobbies include snowboarding and hiking. His father, he has quite an entourage of family here. So we have Father Damien, Brother Donovan, Sister Mackenzie, and Grandmother Faye that are in the audience. And his mother, Debbie Walsh, will come up to pin him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crickets. Not that I want to. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Cameron Walsh.
Was just
We just did Cameron Walsh. He looked at me like I was just there. Michael Sinek. How you doing, Michael? See you, man.
Raise your right hand. Do you, Michael Sinek, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the Constitution of the State of California and the Constitution of the United States of America, and that you will take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I will.
So Mike Sinek is a native to Marysville. He was born and raised here. He started his fire service career here with the Marysville Fire Department by being a volunteer for about 5 years. Then he went to the Yuba College Fire Academy and graduated from them, and then became a Linda intern for about 1.5 years. Mike's hobbies include spending time with his friends and family. And his previous job, he was working nights, so we've kind of converted him over. He really likes the daytime, he's found out. So his sister Michaela is in the audience, and his mother Lori Sinek will be coming up to pin his badge on.
I'd like to bring Engineer and Fire Prevention Specialist Andrew Hall.
Raise your right hand. Do you, Andrew Hall, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear truth, faith, and allegiance to the Constitution of the State of California and the Constitution of the United States of America, and that you will take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which you are about to enter?
I will.
So this one makes me want to cry. Andrew Hall is coming on board with us to fulfill our fire prevention specialist position, which we have spent several months trying to recruit and keep somebody in this capacity. So we're very excited to have Andrew aboard. Plus, we also, when we flow this position, we did it as a multitasking position as a fire engineer level, so that we can also utilize him during the day for some of our other needs, from like concurrent calls and other things that are going on with us. Andrew was born in West Sacramento and lived there for quite a while, and then he currently lives in Cortland. He is also married. His wife Melissa is here, and they have 2 kids, Haley and Connor. He graduated the Sacramento Fire Academy, and he has most recently been working as a fire engineer with the Eldridge Fire Department over in Sonoma County for the past 2 years. So he does have some experience there with doing inspections and plan review stuff over there with the hospitals. Pinning him tonight will be his father, Timothy Hall, who is also a firefighter with the West Sacramento Fire Department. I just want to say, this is a special moment for us, because you can see there's quite a few positions we brought on board, but this is only filling our voids we've had for the last 2 years. So we're ready to move forward and have some staffing to get back to normalcy again. So as Chief Sachs alluded to, I couldn't work with a better group of folks. They're just amazing. They amaze me every day. I mean, I go on calls occasionally just to see their work performed out there, and they're just amazing, serving your community out there. So thank you to everybody.
Okay, let's bring presentation regarding Sutter Butte Energy Watch Partnership Program by Ms. Hawk with Sapphire Marketing Group.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. We have a presentation to show you, so I'm kind of waiting for that to come up. Oh, there we go. I think that's good, yeah. It doesn't want to, but that's okay. We can, thank you. All right. Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Carrie Hauk with Sapphire Marketing Group. We are your local government partner with a program called Sutter Butte Energy Watch Partnership that is funded by PG&E. And the local government partner is actually the city of Yuba City, but we are in charge of the entire Yuba, Sutter, and Colusa region and improving energy efficiency within municipalities under our purview. I'd like to take a moment and introduce my business partner, Dee Dee Brady. She also works on the partnership with us. So what happened is Yuba City was named the local government partner, and then they retained Sapphire Marketing Group to do the outreach to these municipalities. This is our third year working on this project. The first year was actually focused on small, medium businesses. Sure. And the second year was focused on public municipalities, and the third year is just on, we're just focusing on the larger municipalities. So the objective and purpose for our Energy Watch is to identify opportunities for long-term energy reduction within the municipality. So we want to hopefully reduce your dependence on grid energy over time. I'll give you a couple of examples that have come to fruition recently. I met with the city of Williams, found out that the water pump that pumps the water for 2/3 of their city's demand was not performing at the optimum level. It needs replaced, so we brought in PG&E, and it looks like when they replace it in October that they will get a 25% incentive from PG&E toward that pump replacement. So it's a significant savings to the municipalities. This money is sitting there on the table waiting for you to use it. So it can be used on anything for energy efficiency. If your lighting is not LED in your building, if you need to change out your windows, anything where we can, prove energy efficiency, we can get you some incentive dollars from PG&E. And even if we can't prove those major energy efficiencies, they're still on bill financing for other projects. So if we can't prove the energy efficiencies from, say, a window replacement, we can still do 0% on bill financing for you to help fund the project. And that is up to $4 million. Some other projects that we can help you with is benchmarking your building, which means we're going to come in and take measurements of every room in the building, and then we're going to upload that to the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and we're going to compare how your building is operating as far as energy efficiency and compare it to other buildings that are the same size and same use, so we can see if you're improving your energy usage. We also offer no-cost training to city and county employees. Our first training was held in March, and we talked about climate action plans, greenhouse gas inventories, creating a green team. We covered a lot of subjects there. And the municipalities that attended that wanted to see Title 24 training next, so we will be bringing that to you for free in July. So I will be getting you the information on that. We also can offer you assistance with creating your greenhouse gas inventories. We can help you get the report from PG&E on the raw data, then we can take that raw data and put it into a greenhouse gas report for you. So your climate action plan, which is required by AB 32, requires that you put together a plan, a climate action plan, and in that plan you have to reduce your greenhouse gas inventories to 1990s levels. So you have till 2020 to do that as a city, and then we can take and give you a baseline greenhouse gas inventory, which will be part of that report. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is how the funding is allocated for this year. I work on lead generation, and so that is doing outreach with the municipalities. We also do digital marketing, and we provide assistance to the municipalities and do communications, and we have lots of communications and reporting standards on this project. So you'll see that we have an overall budget of $60,500. $37,000 is dedicated to lead generation, and then there's another $14,500 dedicated to, like me being here and doing some educational projects, and then also providing training. And then we have best practices development, where we are promoting energy efficiency within your municipality. So you're going to create policies here within the city of Marysville that would help improve energy efficiency. It might be creating a green team that's evaluating how energy is used. We also plan to feature some agencies. Thank you, that looks awesome. So we do plan on featuring some agencies like the Williams Project. I met with City of Wheatland. They're replacing 8 pumps, and none of them are variable frequency drives. So now that we can get them on variable frequency drives, we're going to save them a whole bunch of money. So, and the final task is Energy Efficiency Revolving Fund, commonly referred to as a REEF. And what that does is, say you upgraded the lighting in this building to LED, and it saved you $5,000 a year, the city council would earmark that $5,000 in savings for the next energy efficiency project that would come down the line, so you have a fund set aside for that next project, whatever it may be. So we really encourage that. So the next slide's about AB 32. I kind of already touched on that. So you know that you have to have a climate action plan. When you do have that climate action plan in place, we encourage you to put it on your website, because the state is watching for compliance and they're taking it and downloading it into their database. So when you do get it developed, please put it on your website. If you need assistance with creating that climate action plan, we have received training on how to put together a climate action plan, and we can help you with that, and that is funded through this project. And so, let's see, the greenhouse gas inventories. I'm currently taking a class on taking that raw data from the greenhouse gas inventory, for the greenhouse gas inventory, and then turning it into a report for you. So PG&E will give you that raw data if you just write them a quick email. Okay, so the next slide just kind of tells you a little bit more about AB 32. So climate action plans, when developed properly, engage the entire community, including businesses and residents. Your farming community is a big part of our community. It even impacts our homeless community, so you really have to take into consideration all the aspects of your community. It can affect, it can have economic impacts. That's why it's really important to engage all aspects of the community. They're commonly created in conjunction with a general plan or a general plan update. So that last bullet just says we encourage you to lead by example. Some municipalities, really common in the Bay Area, if you want to, they've created ordinances that if somebody comes in and wants to build a new building, it needs to be energy neutral, meaning that it does not depend on the grid at all. So that's something that some municipalities have considered, so it's something for you to consider. And then the next slide is, should your organization establish a green team? So I don't know if you have somebody that comes in maybe during non-business hours and takes a look at where energy is being consumed. Did lights get left on? Did the AC get left on? You know, those kind of things. But I really encourage you to take a look at that. And I already talked about the ordinances. I think we're getting close to being done. So yeah, the Title 24 training, I will let you know, we invite elected officials to participate. We encourage building officials, city managers, CAOs, anybody to come and participate. We held it at the city council chambers in Yuba City last time. We fed breakfast and lunch, and it was really great to see the municipalities in the same room sharing information. I thought that was, just such a valuable component of that training. So I would just encourage you to identify some people to attend the next training. And with that being said, are there any questions?
Any questions? Are staff looking something from us, or is this just a way for
There's information.
information? Okay. Any questions?
And your staff has been great to work with.
Okay.
Marty knows all about this, and
Wonderful.
been really great to work with. So if I can help in any way, just please reach out.
Thank you so much. But you're staying right there.
Oh, Dee Dee's doing this.
Oh, okay. So now we're gonna have an update on 2019 Annual Peach Festival.
The other side of
It
the
looks
coin.
like Ms. Stratus with Sapphire Marketing will be doing the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. The last time we appeared here was when you approved Sapphire Marketing Group to do the management of the Peach Festival. So we thought it might be helpful just to give you a little update of where things are going. I know you have a very full night, so we're going to condense this down. But just so that you know, we did meet with all of the, we invited all of the Marysville merchants to come to a meeting on April 7th. We had a good turnout. We had some great discussions, and some really good ideas came from that. So I wanted to go over with you some of the changes that we're working on that will look a little bit different this year. Some of those came from the merchant meeting. Some have come from other sources, but the biggest one is we're working on doing the layout of the booths down the middle of the street instead of on the outsides. That was the biggest concern of all the merchants because their buildings were being hidden. So we really want to expose the businesses and get the booths into the middle of the street. We've been working with Chief Carlin and Chief Sachs to make sure it's all, safe for everybody, and any emergency has been taken care of as far as being prevented or being prepared for. Because of the way we're doing this, we couldn't allow any of the merchants to just go out in front of their building anymore, which some of them had done in the past. So, because that's really where the traffic will be going through. So we've asked that they not do that, but we have given them a discount on their booth to be a part of the Peach Festival out in the street. We're looking at adding a second stage. It'll be where the music in the park is currently, because we really wanted to amp up the entertainment. The issue at this point is getting the sponsors to give us the money to get the entertainment. But in the long run, that's where we hope to end up. We've also looked at moving the main stage from 6th Street, where it has been, to just north of 6th Street on D Street, like in front of the old Forbes house, that area. And part of that is just to cut down on some of the expenses, because that huge tent that's required on 6th Street is really expensive. So we can cut down a little bit by just moving it around the corner. And we're also considering flipping the whole thing. So we put the children's area down between like 7th and a half to 9th. And then using 1st through 3rd more, to continue on with the booths. So that's still in the workings, but that's one of the things we're trying for. So I wanted to let you know all your social media has been updated. We've done the website, we've done, I've gotten Facebook updated, and we'll start posting a lot more on Facebook in June and July to pique interest. Ancillary events that are confirmed are St. John's Tasty Treat Competition is coming back from past years. Yuba Sutter Training Zone is doing the 5K run walk. The Marysville FFA Booster Club is taking care of the peaches and pancake breakfast to go with the 5K run. And we've talked to both Results Radio and 93Q. They're both going to be doing live remotes and interviews during the festival. And Results has all of their games planned out. Ricky, get ready, because I'm pretty sure there's a mayoral pie eating contest here. You've got to defend
Sean,
your position.
I won already.
Yeah, you got to keep it going with the peach pie.
I'll delegate, cheat, whatever you want to call it again if I have to.
So, and speaking of media, we've also talked to Fox 40 in Sacramento and the Appeal Democrat to try to get some interest raised. Entertainment, thanks to Councilman Buttacavoli, who speaks the language of musical entertainment. He has been talking with all of the bands, and he's kind of got an A and a B, depending again on the money that we get raised. But he has kind of that lineup. We've been shifting everything over to him. He has had the help of Tim, help me. Chichinsky, I saw he, there he and I wanted to say too, a big thank you to the Point Church, who is helping us out with some of the staging and equipment for the entertainment. That's a huge benefit for us. I'll just close with where we're kind of at with specific numbers. So last year, there were 26 total food vendors. We already have 20 booked. Last year total, there were 71 craft vendors, and we have 21 booked. Part of that problem, I think, is we don't have all their email addresses or ways to reach out. But we did come up with a different way today, and we're going to give this a try. Keep trying until you get it right. And sponsors, last year you brought in about $9,000 in sponsors, and we have about $6,000 now. So it's all moving in, a really good direction with 2 months left. We've still got a lot of time, but we're making great strides. We've been meeting Chief Sachs on a pretty regular basis and kind of keeping that going. We drive him nuts, I'm sure, with emails sometimes. But it's all gone very smooth so far. Any questions at all that I can answer?
Questions?
No?
I think, for me, thank you for outreaching to the Sacramento market as much as we can. I think there's a lot of folks out there who like to take drives not too far. Even Elk Grove, Roseville, Lincoln. Let's try to reach out there somehow. I don't know if they have local papers that we can hit them up with. When you guys have information, I can always pass it on to the local elected officials out there. But I know those families enjoy taking a nice little trip and stuff, especially in the morning when it's not so hot.
So I should also say, I know, Mayor, you know about this, but we have the first of several press releases will go out tomorrow. And that will go to all the Sacramento markets, the Chico market, Grass Valley, Nevada City, and to our west. So we are trying to broaden that. One of the very first phone calls I personally fielded when we put our phone number on the website was a gentleman who called from Los Angeles. And all he wanted to know was when the dates were, because he's come for the past 5 years and he's not missing it this year. So, I mean, from LA, they're coming. If they love peaches and they love festivals, you can't beat us.
And tell me about the input you got from the business owners. That was really important for the business owners on D Street especially. I know they were really interested in continuing giving input. And the more we can get them engaged, you know, decorating their storefronts and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Are you-
And we talked about all of that, like really getting downtown Marysville into Peach Festival. We have our second follow-up meeting actually this Sunday at 3 o'clock at the Brick. If any of you would like to attend, we'd love to have you, but we'll be there at 3. And they are engaged. It was great to hear some of their ideas. You know, we had people doing a quilt contest that had to do with peaches, painting, you know, the fronts of the buildings in peach themes. One other thing I should say that we have changed also, I should throw in, is that we've made it a requirement for every food vendor to have at least one item that includes peaches. So they can't just come and sell something that's not peaches.
It's gotta have peach salsa with it.
Ricky, that is exactly what I have been trying to get, and I cannot get anybody to make peach salsa yet. But we did get peach crepes today, and we were pretty excited about that. I have suggested peach salsa to many people, but
Just mango, peach, same thing?
I'm still going to work on it.
Thank you for your work.
Any others? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So now we have the last presentation, the Fifth Street Improvement Project presentation by our Community Development Services Director, Mr. Bermudez.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Today's presentation is an overview of a potential project that the city would like to move forward with to secure grant funding. And to understand the complexity and the situation that we're in, I think what I would need to do is go back probably close to about a couple years ago. Initially, the city went and sought after grant funding for Fifth Street. This was part of a state transportation improvement project grant funding that came about. City went after this funds to rehabilitate Fifth Street. This is well before I arrived with the city, and the city was able to secure that funding in an amount of $750,000. The amount of funding is going to be utilized and per the terms of the grant for PS&E, which is Plan Specifications and Engineering. Basically, in a nutshell, design work to rehabilitate the corridor in Fifth Street. As I arrived at the city and through dialogue with council through my tenure so far, as well as fielding phone calls from the general public regarding Fifth Street and the condition of Fifth Street, and also conversations with the city's consultant engineering group. From the get-go, I think the initiative has always been to rehabilitate Fifth Street, rehabilitate it fast, try to get an improved surface, and just simply get it to a standard condition that is acceptable, where we're not running into current conditions of tires blowing out, alignments having to be reset, insurance claims from particular drivers that are coming to the city and are then thereby being contested by the city. So I think in a nutshell, moving forward with this particular improvement has always been a focus and priority of council to just, in my words, get it done and let's improve that corridor. Subsequently, as staff and our engineering group have worked on particular design options, we were informed through the Sacramento Area Council of Governments that there would be this one-time, what they would call off-cycle funding. The genesis of this funding was a set-aside that SACOG decided to do as a result of a potential repeal of SB1 funds, which is the road rehabilitation funds that we all are familiar with at the gas pump. And The thought was with SACOG at that time, there could be the potential that that SB1 would be repealed. As we know, it was not. And so they had this set aside funding, and ultimately when they realized SB1 would move forward, it was presented to SACOG and to the Transportation Board of SACOG that there was this additional $54 million of funding available for agencies, jurisdictions that were not part of its own separate transportation planning agency. So meaning that El Dorado, Placer were not in the queue as part of the regional stakeholders, meaning the greater opportunity for the city of Marysville to secure this funding was even heightened more because of this fact that the competitive pool would be reduced. And from personal experience, Placer County tends to garner a lot of the money for roadways. The fact that they're not involved in this is actually a pretty, I think, definitely a blessing for the city of Marysville to potentially secure this funding. So knowing this, $54 million came available. SACOG set 3 different parameters to go after the funding, and one of those paths is to do a rehabilitation type of project in road improvement that we are moving forward with. Initially, when we received the STIP funds, the $750,000, the thought was that in the regular cycle, the city would go after the funding round and secure the funding that way, and hopefully be competitive, and then eventually move the design forward at a later year, and in my estimates, likely construction in 2022 at best, if we were to secure that funding. But with this opportunity that came about, the $54 million, SACOG put together their parameters, their guidelines, which were in addition going to be tweaked and less cumbersome as a traditional grant package. So this made this opportunity even more lucrative for the city and more of an opportunity to try to secure this funding. That information for the grant package has been released. It was released on May 7th. It's, in my view, take 10 pages, condensed to 3 pages. It's very simplistic. It's very, I think, ease of use, and I think the biggest hurdle would be getting to an engineer's estimate, which we can easily do by the time frame. This particular request for funding and application package would need to be submitted to SACOG by June 7th, and that would be for the ultimate design of the particular road option that we would pursue. So with that new information, the city set out in staff to present to the community a few options. And as I referenced in the beginning, from the get-go, the intent and purpose has always been to improve this road segment. That's really what the mission and the objective has always been, to a better condition than what it is today. The city had a pop-up meeting in City Hall lobby mid-April to discuss the various options that are out in the lobby, as well as I think you do have a copy as well, and discuss any comments, ideas, take input from the community about the various options. We took input, heard comments, and the general theme at that particular pop-up at that time was concern for safety, given the amount of accidents and the knowledge of those particular businesses that were around there, and just common knowledge of people that travel that particular corridor, to ensure safety, take account for the businesses that are on this particular corridor and not affect and impact them. And then lastly, would be trying to accommodate a better flow of movement for this particular corridor. So with that, within these options, I will refer to what we have is 3 options at this point, and then potentially a 4th that we're trying to work on to get to the council for just a discussion that integrates the comments that we heard and the feedback we heard at that particular pop-up meeting. Now, before I dive into the particular options, I would preface that through the dialogue and the exchange of the community and the voice of the community, they impressed upon the Planning Commission that they wanted to have their opportunity to opine on an option as well as present an alternative option. So at the last Planning Commission meeting last Thursday, they provided, meaning a community member provided an alternative option would be a 3-lane option, and the Planning Commission weighed the merits of that particular option as well as the other options, and there was a robust dialogue, roughly about 2 hours plus of discussion with the Planning Commission on this particular corridor. And ultimately, the decision and the direction that the commission wanted me to deliver to the council was that they wanted an opportunity that that particular alternative option or community option be discussed and put into the queue as far as a potential option. So with that said, we now are focusing on the 3 options. I think the other thing to preface as well is that this is a time-sensitive particular matter, and options do need to be selected. And there are scenarios here under these 3 options, and potentially the 4th, where when we're dealing with traffic type of movements and analysis, the closest that we can keep the options to a similar characteristic of the roadway network in that corridor are the better, where you essentially don't have alternative impacts by redesigning a roadway. When you start looking at redesign of road segments, that is when it reaches a level where you do have to evaluate the totality of those impacts and what it means to your street network and the surrounding area. So at this point, we as staff are presenting option 1, 2, and 3. Option 1 is an improved safety option, and essentially this particular option would be a road configuration that is very similar to the road configuration that we see currently, 12-foot wide travel lanes. We would account for safety by the bulb outs that are detailed on this particular plan. As noted in this option, in all options, the construction work would start from Pine Street and go towards eastbound to Willow. And this particular would improve ramps, pavement delineation, signals, and it would maintain the street parking. Thank you for that. There we go. So in this particular option, as I mentioned, we would have 12-foot travel lanes. We would accommodate sidewalks and the current gutter system. And I think, one thing to point out regarding this particular as-built kind of built environment condition that's similar is that when we heard regarding pedestrian and circulation and bicyclist, I think it's important to point that the Bike and Ped Master Plan, when that was going through its review, identified 6th Street actually as the bike corridor as opposed to this particular corridor that is heavily traveled. So within the Bike and Ped Master Plan, it actually funnels and pulls the bike traffic onto 6th Street. So on option 2, this again would start at Pine to Willow. It would keep the existing 12-foot path of travel. And in this case, what we would do is we would have ramps and delineation and signals. And in this particular design, it would eliminate no on-street, it would eliminate parking. So there would be no parking for businesses. This option does include the bulb outs as characterized in the previous option. It also includes some re-engineering of the connections in the alleyways or the side streets as well to ensure better safe movements. And it would accommodate sidewalk and gutter and a Class 2 type of bicycle type of movements. And then lastly, with option 3, This particular option would have ramps, pavement delineation, and include signals. It would have the median for left turn pockets and no on-street parking. As you see in this option, it does include a little bit more decorative type of feature, but it allows for an actual controlled left turn movements or turning movements and along the corridor. This would definitely help for safety of movements of vehicles, as well as avoid stacking that typically occurs in the current condition, and make for a better road segment. Again, on this particular option, there's no on-street parking. That would be eliminated. And so lastly, based on the three options, as I mentioned, when we rolled these out to the pop-up group and took input, there was a greater, I think, concern about the businesses losing their parking, and staff definitely heard that. And so, as I mentioned, we're reworking to try to accommodate, I won't say all parking, but to provide parking for in those general areas of where you have existing businesses currently, and making sure that that still can be a safe road corridor, as well as accommodate the turning movements as well. So that is still to be developed, but we're refining that as we speak. So with that said, this is an overview. As I mentioned, a deadline that we have coming around the corner is June 7th to have our full package submitted to Sacramento Area Council of Governments. And I think lastly, what I'd say, this is just a presentation. I'm going to, based on council direction and input and feedback, we do have a council meeting next Tuesday, so I'm going to do my best to flip out a staff report wherever that recommendation or wherever the council wants to steer this particular topic, and get what I need to do to make that submission to SACOG if that's the will of the city council. So at this point, closes my presentation. Can handle any questions that you may have at this time.
Do we have questions?
I do.
Yes, sir.
I noticed on 3, you have street lights. On 1 and 2, there are no street lights. Is that an omission that won't be put in 2 and 3, or 1 and 3?
It will only be in 3. Yeah, correct.
He that comes up,
Yes.
don't speak.
So,
he knows better.
Forgot to introduce, we do have a city's engineer, MHM, John Mellon, as staff here available. Yes, existing, and then you have new street lights.
Hey, now my second question, Mr. Mayor, is I'd like to know, is there any, since we don't know what the citizens agreement, what their position is, we have not heard from that. At the end of your presentation, I'm going to make a recommendation that this is my right as a city council member to agendize that presentation on the 21st, so we will know what their proposal is. And secondly, can any of that be integrated into any of these without causing a complete drawing over again?
Based on the dialogue that I've had with the city engineer, any type of road segment that takes the configuration to a changed road segment, meaning a reduction of lanes, would require some form of traffic impact analysis to understand the consequence and what type of capacity issues would happen on all segments in and around this corridor.
Well, who's going to do that study? I guess is a question I have.
Well, we would need to hire an individual to do that study, but I would say that if we go down that path of a totally different option than a 4-lane option, I'd be pretty frank, we would not be making the grant deadline of June 7th.
I guess my concern is you use a civil engineer to draw these plans, but now you're saying we have to have a traffic engineer to do the other one. I don't see why we can't use a civil engineer to do their plan. Why do we have to hire a traffic engineer to do the study? We didn't do it on these.
Sure, because we have a like-for-like condition of a 4-lane roadway, and then a traffic engineer actually would study data and impact related to your ADT, average daily trips, as well as circulation routes, as well as the consequences of an impact to take it down to a smaller roadway. And I think the important part too, we have historical data prior to the bridge construction. We don't have new data related to after the bridge. So if there is a study, I've worked with many traffic engineers, they likely would come back and say, I can do this, but I'm probably going to tell you with a qualified statement that after we complete it, that once you open that bridge up, the movements and the ADT are definitely going to change, and it may change the outcome and the findings.
Well, Jim, I think as a seated council member, and the citizens want to have an input on this, which they have a right to do, and I have a feeling that they have not had the opportunity to present their their program. And I'm a little distressed over that, because it is supposed to be a citizen's participation as well as not only a staff dictatorial issue. And I have a problem with that. And I'm going to have that agendized on the next meeting as a seated council member for a presentation.
Council member?
Yeah, let me finish, please, Mr. Mayor.
Thought I'd find a solution for us.
Well, I'm trying to get a solution. Trust me. So anyway, I think they have a right to make their presentation. And they have not had a right to do that yet to the city council.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
in saying that, I yield my time back to the mayor.
Council member, they're here, they can make that presentation, they're ready to make the presentation, so we can hear them right now. So we don't have to, we can take that input for public input right now as council, and then we can give direction staff for the 21st.
Well, I heard you say you weren't going to allow that.
That's why I'm giving a solution right now.
Okay, all right, you changed your mind then.
I'm not changing my mind, I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable and that we all see the information.
I feel very sure, Mayor, that they would love to give their presentation right
Okay.
now. I think they're ready to do it.
Very good, so
Thank you
we'll
for-
definitely do that.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Bruce.
Wasn't there part of the funding that had to do with?
Your mic.
Wasn't there part of the funding that had to do with it being a green project, as in the sense of the bike lanes and all of that helped you?
The
Am I
competitiveness.
saying this right? I'm not saying it quite right.
Are you talking about competitiveness, like points
Yeah.
for the actual project, for the
Well,
application?
Yeah, the SACOG definitely has, they prefer, their preference is to see a complete street type of network submitted, and it gives it more preference in its review. So to say that, does this alignment and the options present a complete street package? I would say in a traditional sense, partially, but not fully, what would give the highest ranking points as a complete street. But I would just say to that is, when we submit it, if it is a 4-lane option, it is a corridor, it is a major arterial gateway connecting Yuba City to East Street. So they're going to look at that and factor that in their analysis, depending on whatever design we present to them.
The reason I ask is because in the third option, we're not putting the bike lanes and stuff in, and I don't know if that would drop our point system.
It shouldn't, because we would back end it by the alternative of the bike and ped master plan, and that our corridor is off of 6th Street.
Okay. And can you give us just briefly the difference? You're saying there's possibly a fourth option that you could add some parking, and my question along with that is, is it just related to between like H and I, or I guess it would actually be between J and H, without changing the whole E to H?
Sure, let me ask John, with
Okay.
our city engineer, to speak to that.
Okay.
He's been hearing the feedback about the parking
Sure.
and trying to make the adjustments to accommodate where the parking can actually be located.
Yeah, and to what Bruce is saying, that's what we were looking at, is between J and H, modifying the median in that area to accommodate parking, because basically the majority of the businesses are between H and I,
Yeah.
but you also still need to allow for the left turn pocket onto H Street.
So we would lose the pockets then, right, between J and H, most likely to be able to accommodate the
Yeah, to
parking?
accommodate that. We could even look at potentially limiting the movements on I across Fifth Street to eliminate that problem with the left turn movements on I.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There's a lot of different options to kind of adjust it minorly without changing the overall scheme. And a lot of this is similar to what Yuba City's doing on the other side. They did the first section of Bridge Street, and now they're trying to do the section between Gray and
Yeah, down to,
Cooper.
yeah.
But to what I think Bill was asking and of Jim is basically when we get into a scenario where we're changing the number of lanes provided in the east and westbound direction, that's when you get into an overall change in the master traffic of the area. Fair and Pierce had done an extensive study as part of the Fifth Street Bridge project, and they've basically mapped out everything from Highway 99 to Highway 70 and looked at the connections between not only the 5th Street, the 10th Street, 3rd Street, you know, the two bridges and all the roads that interconnect to them. If you reduce the number of lanes on this, obviously traffic's going to get pushed more onto 3rd Street, and it could even get pushed more to the north on one of the other more residential streets. So that's part of the issue with changing it. The first two options don't change it at all from the existing traffic condition.
Right.
The third option actually improves it by allowing to take the left turn movements out of the main flow of traffic, which is obviously not very safe, and it cuts down on the stacking. I believe F Street's the worst because there's so much left turn now that so much capacity for left turns in a single cycle of light now that they've expanded the left turn pockets on East Street, that if you get somebody turning at F, they can stack up more than the cars that are coming through. So it's a potential concern. I know originally at this project we looked at potentially putting a signal at F, but unless that signal's timed perfectly with the signal at E, you could create a problem by doing that. That's why we're looking at just doing a pedestrian crossing there instead of doing a full signal. And also we don't want to encourage more traffic down F Street because it's a residential neighborhood north of 5th, and you also have the school there.
So is the only crossing section going to be at, I guess it would be at H, right, where the light is?
Well, that's going to be the only signalized intersection, but we'll do like a lighted pedestrian crossing at F.
Oh, okay, that's what I was wondering.
Where are you gonna do the pedestrian walking signal? Are you gonna do like a flashing
beacon, you know, with push buttons.
Which ones? F?
At F.
Okay.
Yeah, we have that planned into it with all three options.
Okay, good. That's it, I think.
Any other questions while I'm up here?
Yeah, well, I don't know, we might have more questions, sir.
No, actually, Bruce touched on what I was curious about, a variation of what the fourth option might look like.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we were trying to do, like a hybrid where you could get the left turn pockets and the medians incorporated, but still accommodate the parking
Yeah,
on the west
parking's
end.
kind of an issue. I'm not real keen on losing 100-plus spots, but
Yeah.
business and so forth. Maybe that's it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, you have a question? For staff?
Well, we were trying to get it kind of put together for the next council meeting, and it got moved up a week, so.
Well, we're running out of time, so we.
I had a few questions. I noticed, just visually, this third option will slow traffic in my mind, just having the small, the mediums.
Yeah, medium does make a big difference as far as, you know, it's like when you're driving down the freeway, if there's a K-rail on one side, the lane width's the same width, but just the visual impact does cause people to slow down.
Correct, and just having the banners and other visual things for people to look at, I think it does also just normally, as part of a planner, I think they add those features just so to kind of slow down and calm traffic in those areas.
The one, I guess, caveat to the option 3 is that once you start putting a median in and landscaping and, you know, you start driving up the cost a little bit for the total project and
the maintenance.
And the maintenance. So, I mean, there's nothing cheaper than pavement and just striping as opposed to,
Yeah, I think the
Concrete.
median is fine, and I think I'll leave it up to staff to kind of figure out if it moves forward, the best way to decorate it or whatever it may be. But I think the important for me is the lights, the look, and then, of course, the banners that I know, I mean, folks like the hospital will probably be really interested in having that type of opportunity to promote some of their stuff out there.
and one of the things too is, I guess it's not really clear in here because it's kind of like minutia compared to what, the big picture we're looking at. But for the, like Bill had asked about, is for the lighting, if the budget would allow, we were looking at using the same decorative lights in the existing locations if we go with the options where we're not putting lighting in the middle. And then for the signal at H, we would match the new signal that's going in with the Fifth Street Bridge project at J, which is that black decorative street light.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's what's being installed with that project. So we would just match that going down the corridor. So it looks a little more uniform because Yuba City's trying to match it on their side and over the bridge, and they put it at the Fifth and J. So we'd try and keep that corridor going.
I just want to clarify with you, one more thing is, the parking, I know folks, and I think it makes sense to try to, limit or add some additional parking I like the option 3. I know that those small businesses probably need, some parking left over for them to, I know the pharmacy has some drive-in parking there, but there's some other businesses, and I know probably use the side street for parking already right now, but I know there's some that just might need just a couple spots in there.
Well, yeah, there's a couple businesses right there between I and Lemon that have no parking.
No parking, yeah. So we want to make sure we help them with that. The ride-out parking is a different animal because I really feel that we have to work with them and try to find another solution to mitigate some of that parking pressure. And I know they have lots across on 3rd Street and some other ways to kind of figure that one out. So I'm not too worried about the hospital, I guess, in the sense, and their needs, because we need to be able to figure a bigger solution for them, especially if they're going to grow and then create their own campus over there in that area. So for me, the hospital parking, we have to figure out a different solution because it's a lot larger problem. Do you have a sense, either Jim or you, like what does that look? I mean, do you agree with me that that's a separate, bigger problem that we have to kind of solve?
Yeah, I would concur that for a ride-out and for the parking that is provided, currently it's under park. The hospital's under park. I think there's, well-thought-out conversation, discussion with all the counselors that that Venice needs to step it up and figure out what they're going to do under surface lots and how they can manage that and mitigate the push of parking onto the city's facilities.
So I agree that we need to kind of help out those smaller businesses between H and I, or H and J, I guess, to kind of help them out with those needs. But aside from that, I think that the speed will be slowed down with the mediums, and then the backup will be limited by the turns, and that's really grateful for folks right now because it's pretty dangerous right now, kind of being on your own out there, facing the traffic, trying to turn left, and also backing people up and stuff. So this is a great design for that reason. I do want to have just a kind of environmental question. So is your point that reducing the number of lanes would actually put pressure on our other streets? And then we'll take a kind of not just a traffic count, but an environmental kind of...
Well, no, you do a traffic impact report. Either the Fair and Pierce that they had done the original traffic study for the bridge products would be, or another traffic engineer would take the data from that original study and look at it. Yeah, but like part of what Jim had mentioned, that that just has forecasting for how the traffic's going to be once the bridge is complete. The real scenario wouldn't be in place for probably another year or two.
And I know that Caltrans just made an improvement on E Street, right? And they changed that from 1 left turn to 2 left turns going into Fifth Street and stuff.
Yeah, they increased the turn pockets by limiting the movements at 4th.
because the assumption is that, you know, and then, so that's kind of the whole, I mean, that's just gonna back things up if all of a sudden you have to kind of move into a one-lane, function there.
Correct. I think, one thing I would point out, I think in the dialogue that has occurred so far is the focus is kind of an eastbound perspective, which is everything funnels to 3rd Street. Well, there's a PM demand as well. And I think the majority of people do not make the left turn at 3rd. They actually go one over and make the left turn on 5th. And by just staff knowledge of the people that go over the bridge currently, granted, I get it's under a construction project, but currently that traffic backs up over the bridge at times, and it's at a standstill. Now, with the 2 lanes, will it be more efficient? Probably, but there's still the potential for that impact to happen and occur. And I just don't want to discount that the mindset is looking at an eastbound of what we do eastbound, and we just push everything to 3rd. I think there needs to be some kind of knowledge of how we look at what happens to the westbound and going across from Marysville into Yuba City as well, of how we adjust this accordingly.
Thank you.
And I think part of it too is the current condition isn't representative of what it was before the bridge project or what it will be after. But just because, you know, they've been operating under traffic control for over a year now, so it's kind of been.
And I guess also another assumption is that these buildings will stay the same use for the next 30 years, and that's probably not true. The hope is that the use of some of these buildings will change, especially with the hospital being there, and they're willing to grow. And in my mind, new investment coming in that might take over some of these buildings for different use. And so I guess for me, it's like, if we also need to think kind of what the long-term 10, 20 years is going to look in the city of Marysville and 5th Street. If we make this investment, the people will take a look at it as a place that they might want to, you know, invest in some of those older buildings out there that might need some maybe different uses that are currently there for now.
Did you?
Yeah.
So, I mean, with respect to what you're saying, Mayor, I mean, I get it might look more aesthetically pleasing, but I was kind of curious, Jim, and, I'm sorry, John?
Yes.
In reference to what you were sharing, that the historical studies that are setting precedent with what you guys making decisions, these 3 options, is there any sort of thoughts, like, essentially, if you go with option 3, you're kind of getting rid of the emergency lane? I mean, the old fire lane or whatever the case is, so.
No, right now there is no center lane.
Right,
It's
right.
2 and 2.
It's a
So
fairly.
in a sense, you're making 5 lanes.
You're making 5 lanes with, which option am I missing here?
3.
3. So the center medium that you're putting in there,
Yeah. It would be.
Replace the parking spaces.
Yeah,
Replace the parking
it'd be,
spaces.
you're getting rid of the parking in order to gain another lane. And then with option 2, you're getting rid of the parking to gain bike
paths.
or bike lanes.
So, okay. Well, I do have some concerns with, you know, the way certain things go. If we do have change in occupancy in some of the buildings, you know, further down the line too, parking is an issue in the city of Marysville. And, you know, getting rid of spots is not exactly going to help that situation. And if we do end up having a change of occupancy in there, and with our current parking ordinance, I mean, they would have to pay into that parking account.
Yeah, I
for those
think
spots.
there's definitely, I mean, in my world, I imagine hotels, condos, you know, across the street between G and F, you know, because that land is underused, and I think there's really opportunity for the private sector to see the opportunities with the hospital and the workforce. That's going to create more demand for possible parking and stuff. So that's what I'm talking about, creating the hospital and that whole arts, music, I mean, health and arts district we have to come up with a better solution for parking. There's not going to be enough parking for any of it, you know, if we grow in that sense. So there has to be a way to mitigate that, but this is not, right now, we're not trying to solve that issue. I guess it's a separate issue for us to solve in a different level, with finding whether part of the investments include adding, you know, a parking structure in combination with the hospital. But that has to be kind of thought out when we look at the master plan in the solar area. And I know that's something that staff, including Jim, are working with the hospitals. how do we master plan this whole area so it's gonna be able to take in consideration, mitigate some of the needs for parking.
So, in question, if we got a deadline on this, and not completely understand where we're gonna see the comments from the public on their particular option they wish us to look at, you guys are talking about presenting the fourth option next week for us to make a decision on by when, hopefully?
By next week.
That's what I figured. Okay, so.
But I think what they want to hear from us is, do we agree that we need to add additional parkings for those small businesses? And I think the input that we got from the public is yes, and what staff are saying is, we can find some ways to add additional parking. I think there's some safety components here, the crosswalks, those are important, and I appreciate that. I like the fact that we want to maintain the safety of the pedestrians. To me, that's important. So I guess for me is I want to hear what are the elements that are important for us as a council so the engineers and planners can put that in place and say, okay, these things are important to the council. They've heard from what me believes are important, but they also want to hear from the rest of the council. What are the elements that are important? Safety, parking for those small businesses.
Are you gonna go around the dais, or are you just asking for us to raise our hand here?
Well, I want to hear from the public, and then we can make those comments, if that's okay.
That sounds good.
And I think what Jim's trying to illustrate with this is that, I mean, it's not going to be the final project that we're taking to SACOG, but we need to have it, fine-tuned to a point where we're characterized which direction we're heading with the project so that we can move forward with that grant funding. Otherwise, we'd just be going back to the next round of STIP funding.
Correct.
So it wouldn't kill the project, it would just move it out further.
So, through the chair, I'm sorry. A clarification, real quick, what you're saying is that the option isn't steadfast, this option, only this option. It is changeable. If you say option one is the direction you want to go, there's variations.
As long as you keep the characterization of it.
Of that option. So whichever one of the potentially 5 options that I guess we're going to be understanding, the 4 that are presented, and if we hear one from the public, whichever direction we decide to go, there's a little latitude, but not much.
Well, I would say, given that I have the common knowledge to go through the presentation on the community option, that does scale back this roadway to 3 lanes. And
I have not heard it, so I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, so part of the discussion at the commission meeting was if we do go down that path, I think, we believe we're not going to make the SACOG grant, because in order to city to sign off on that, make an informed decision, it's going to require a level of analysis that really needs to dial in what the characteristic of that roadway would do to the surrounding area and get that data before we would obviously give it to you to make an informed decision, because I think the council would want to know everything about the totality of the impact of reducing a road segment before we submit for a grant.
So what you're saying is that if we do take that 5th option, the community's option, we lose the grant? Because we have to do an analysis.
The grant is not 100% guaranteed, given the parameters that I described of our relationship with SACOG, as well as some of the other agencies not in the competitive pool. I think present a high probability that we may be able to capture this, given the fact that we got construction on the bridge.
Sure.
I think they want to see that. Caltrans wants to see that road, the corridor completed and finalized. Now, with that said, as John mentioned, we can always go back to the STIP pool and secure that funding. I think if we do that, probably we won't be starting construction maybe 2022, 23 is be the trajectory.
But our intent is to have an option that would possibly encumber some funds to make it happen.
Yeah, because going through the SACOG and securing the 54 million, I think puts us in a better position to probably, hopefully, start construction next year sometime.
Sure. Okay.
And the other thing too would be is if we're pushing this project to the next round of STIP funding for construction, then that's pushing out another project further out into the cycle. So obviously if we can secure construction funding for this project sooner, then you can move on to the next project, which would be another rehab or, some sort of, a lot of it depends on the criteria that they're pushing out there.
So is there a price tag with any one of these that we have for thought process?
What we developed on an estimated, level is anywhere from 1.8 to like 2.8 million.
I did read that, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's 53 available, so I think the 2.8 was still, here's, for me, as being the member of SACOG, is that if we wait for 2020, we're gonna have to compete with a lot of other projects, tons of other projects. This pool is gonna be a lot smaller, it's a lot quicker, it's gonna be 3 pages instead of, the full analysis. And I can tell you, the SACOG is geared to help Marysville out, not only because it's a great project to improve Fifth Street, but also because of the connection with the investments that they've made in Yuba City, with the new bridge, and they really see this as an important gap that needs to be filled, and this is a great opportunity for us to be nimble and be able to move forward fairly quickly. So, and I think we'll be very competitive on this round to be able to get those funds. Going to 2020, we're gonna have to compete with a lot larger, more municipalities, more cities, and then our odds of getting fully funded for the project becomes less, and we have to push the project till 2023, and our roads will continue to deteriorate and continue to break down, and we don't have the monies to be able to pay for that.
And I know Yuba City's moving forward. They're trying to move around their funding for their widening the portion between Cooper and Gray. They're looking at investing some impact fees that they've collected and possibly some SB1 funds to get that one under construction next year.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I need a point of clarification. What is this grant we're asking for? What does it do? It doesn't provide overlay or anything like that. It's not a maintenance grant, it's a planning grant, isn't it?
No, it's
The
rehab.
$750,000 is not.
Oh, the
given anything?
70/50 we have?
Yeah.
For the
750 we
design.
had was, and it was kind of twofold. This project was originally going to be funded for construction, and some of the funds got pulled into the bridge project, and SACOG kind of moved a bunch of shells around and gave what was left over and gave it to the design on this and a project study report on a future road. So that it's combined funding for those two things, but
Is
it's
this for
no
the-
construction funds.
Is this project, whatever we decide to vote on and support, is that for the 50-point-some million for actual construction?
Yeah, yes.
So the
This
design of
project
this
is
road
funded for design, but it is not funded for construction.
So that's my point. So we still have to design this street, right? These are just preliminary CAD drawings.
Yeah, these are just preliminaries, yes.
So
But we have enough information that we can put the
Does that make
final
sense?
Well,
design.
and we have that money already.
Yeah, we have-
750,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To do all
But how
the
much of
design.
that's left?
A lot.
A lot of it?
Like about 730 or
So
740.
we have $700+ to do the engineering study, right?
Yeah, but none of that, it's not going to be that amount.
No, I'm just saying that's what's available.
And what we look at with Caltrans is potentially rolling the additional funds into construction or another project.
Now, this design money, is that the one that has to be in by June?
No, the
design?
construction
We
money.
already have that,
Construction,
right?
we have that.
So we're really not on a deadline to get this approved to SACOG since we already have $750,000.
Yes, we are on a deadline.
For the-
Well, I just
If we
asked
want
that.
construction funds, we are on a deadline.
Construction, but this isn't construction.
Yes.
Yes.
But by next year, this would be a completed project if we
Okay.
have construction.
Now I
funds.
understand. Because I was trying to find out what the 750 went for.
Yes,
That was supposed to be for design.
correct.
And it wasn't for design. We're going to put design and construction under one bill.
No.
Am I confused or am I confused? I think I'm
We're holding off
confused.
finalizing the design till we had direction.
Okay.
But the minute there's direction and everything's completed, we'll finalize the design, have construction documents ready. So the
Okay.
minute we have construction funding, it'll,
Then we compete in the 50 million.
No.
no.
Forget it.
So right now, sir?
It's irrelevant.
No,
You guys got to figure
right-
it out.
Sir, right now, we have a bank account with $700,000.
Yes, we do.
That's gonna help us pay for, if we move forward today or next year, on what direction we wanna design, the engineers will put all the weights and all this engineering that needs to happen. What we're asking right now, what this staff is asking is, let's apply for the construction funding as well, so both things can happen at the same time. If we get that funding for construction, then they can get going with the engineering, and then we start getting our construction dollars in 2020. and it will be able to have a beautiful Fifth Street connected to the new bridge by the end of 2020.
With lights.
With lights.
Thank you, Mayor.
We won't put as many lights as Bridge Street.
I'm sorry?
I said we won't put as many lights as Bridge Street.
Oh, you gotta light it up. Thank you.
Any other comments, any questions from staff? Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, through us as a city, have we, because I like 3 and probably 4, when you do your adjusted in the parking for these businesses, I like that. Have we done any kind of analysis on what the maintenance or the PG&E bill is gonna run on this lighting? And I'm assuming we're gonna go to probably an LED type lighting.
Yeah, it'll be
so
LED
it's gonna
lighting, and I
probably be
think-
better than where we're at now.
I think we'd be
Right.
only adding probably the equivalent of, I think, about 10 fixtures from what's already out there, because we'd be eliminating the side lighting and then adding the new lighting, so.
Okay.
I believe a typical LED fixture is, I think it's about $20 a month for the PG&E cost
Yeah.
on it.
So they would be all changed to LED then,
Yeah,
right?
well, the city is LED.
Oh, those are already?
Yeah,
Oh.
the city
Okay.
went through a program, I think in,
Years
I
ago.
think it was like 2012.
Yeah.
and-
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
had all the
PG&E.
fixtures
Okay.
changed to LED.
Except
So
these
so the only big thing with the city, it's gonna be what kind of maintenance, the landscaping maintenance, right, that we're gonna have a little concern with at some point.
And that's one of the things you can look at, and that's where you can get into, Bill's talking about on the final design, if we do have landscaping, we'll work with a landscape architect to try and minimize the
Yeah, the
amount of.
maintenance.
The maintenance.
Maintenance,
I know that's part of, like, on the Yuba City side, they've gone with, that combination of
Decomposed granite
low
and all
grow, DG, low water stuff to try and,
And before you put those black light poles in, we got all those green ones going down East Street, maybe we want them green.
we can make them green. They make them in any color you want.
I know.
Okay,
That's all I
if there's
got.
no question, I'd like to invite the public to make their comments. I know there's a presentation, and I believe it's hooked up to our, no? Okay.
Take a break.
You want me to present it now? Okay. Can I hand out stuff to the council? I only have enough for the council. No, I was gonna hand it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
While she's setting this up, my name's Sarah Jane Gersman, and I live on 827 7th Street. And I just want to say thank you to the City Council for giving me the opportunity to speak before you tonight, and to the Planning Commission for the recommendation. Thank you. And also to the City of Marysville and the Community Development Director and City Manager for seeking out these funds for improvements to Fifth Street, whom without we would not be here tonight. This presentation is an alternative. It's a concept design for the Fifth Street redesign. This alternative is inexpensive. It will help Marysville score higher for funding from SACOG for complete streets. It will improve the traffic flow coming off the Fifth Street Bridge and be a step in the right direction to enrich our city on the path to revitalization. For anyone who's not aware, complete streets are the things like the street parking, safe pedestrian crossing, bike lanes, medians with turn lanes. SACOG encourages cities in California to use these elements, and the higher the score, the higher chance of recovering funds. What we are requesting tonight is that the council make a motion for the engineer working on this project to create a similar visual CAD drawing for this concept design to submit as an alternative when you guys make your decision. So I'd like to start. So this is the aerial mapping for the plans for 5th and J right off the bridge. My next slide is close up. So you're coming off the 5th Street into Marysville. I don't know if it's, oops, if it's easy to see, sorry. But basically what the plan now is there's a right turn lane coming off the bridge, right only, and then adjacent to that above it is a right option, straight option lane. The problem with this is demonstrated in this slide. There's a merge problem. The cars coming off the bridge are going through those archways, and so they don't have much time to get over to the right. And we feel that the straight option, people will be stopping at a red light there, and all the cars behind them that may want to turn right in that lane won't have the option to do so. They mentioned the Fair and Piers study conducted in 2011 that said 2/3 of the traffic coming off of this bridge make the right on J to go to 3rd, to get on the on-ramp, probably to avoid E Street, like we all do. So, you know, that data is also in the FAIRS report, Fair and Piers. So this is the concept that we have. We don't have a CAD drawing because we're not engineers. But basically, you come off the 5th Street Bridge, and instead of just having the one right turn only, you have 2 right turn onlys, directing most of the traffic towards J, the 2/3 that want to go that way, towards J and eventually 3rd, and then 1/3 of the traffic coming down 5th, like they already were before the bridge was under construction. This is showing that route that I just explained. 3rd is the arterial street. It's already set up to go right onto the highway. There's an on-ramp there. It's on the edge of our town, not through our town. It's going through an industrial area that doesn't need much street parking. A lot of those industrial businesses over there have their own parking lots. I mean, we could even open that up to a 5-lane facility if we would, because of it would be an option to consider when the engineers look at it. We could also implement signage to direct people to that route. There's already 2 lanes coming off of 70 or E Street to make the left turn onto 3rd. And, you know, like I said, I live on 7th Street. I live basically 7th and I. That's the way I go. I don't want to go down E Street. What we're worried about is that 5th Street is going to turn into another E Street, another highway running through our town. So the option that we are proposing is cost effective because it is literally using the resource we already have, 3rd Street. We can repave 5th and just paint lines on the road. We can do whatever we want. We can do street parking, and I'll show you in the next couple slides. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is if it doesn't work out, we can always change it in the future, but if we give up this real estate now, we will never get it back. Why should we sacrifice our city just because it's the straight route? Just because it's straight doesn't mean it's the best way. Okay. So these are the ADT counts from the Memorial Bridge study that said that the current 2-lane facility carried about 32,800 people, and then projected on opening day, it would be more close to 46,000. That was supposed to be 2015. It's 4 years later. So if you do the math, the number's probably more like 55,000. Just to put that in perspective, about 67,000 come over E Street, over the bridge on 70. So you can imagine, you know, how many people will be coming through our town once the bridge opens. Okay, so this is a similar, not ours, a similar 4-lane facility. I think it's in Pennsylvania. And basically, as you can see, it's just like kind of what we have now, open road, right? During peak hours, there's going to be traffic, but during non-peak hours, people are just flying down that open road. This is what they did to the facility after. Now, we don't have to incorporate all this landscaping or any of that, but the point is that they're intentionally slowing down the traffic to decrease speeds, not present an open road, provide safe parking, Bike lanes, you know, if we feel that we don't want bike lanes, we definitely don't have to do them. In the example of Fifth Street, this is what people would see when they come off the bridge and come into our town. And they could take Fifth Street all the way down to D Street, where they can shop and enjoy the historical district. The streets will look nicer, so hopefully more investors and businesses will want to invest here, and maybe Marysville can start living up to its potential. This is collision studies from CHP. They're kind of hard to see, but basically the point I'm trying to make here is that E Street and 10th Street have a lot of collisions. Fifth Street is starting to amount to those numbers. What do you think is going to happen when we open the bridge and keep it this 4-lane facility? Eventually we'll need more lights, more traffic, and basically don't want to see Fifth Street become another E Street with dilapidated buildings and people just cruising through our town, not stopping, not spending money, not spending any time here. Fifth Street has the Veterans Park. My child plays at that park. The hospital is right across the street. Elderly people and employees of the hospital trying to cross the street, people trying to conduct business and go to the pharmacy are, you know, with all these cars going by, are going to have even worse time than they have now. I just wanted to point out that, I'll go to the next slide so you can, on Thursday in front of the Planning Commission, I heard several things that caught my attention. I think it might have been misspoken, but I heard staff say that we were in PS&E, and that the package that SAGCOG is requesting is a robust project description with air quality studies, and that our option would have to, he said it, they said it again tonight, that our option would have to be vetted through a traffic engineer and analysis. Since I became aware of this proposed project and the designs after the pop-up, I always assumed that we were in the project initiation phase of the project, which is, it's basically meant for identifying project need, establishing objectives, and preliminary scoping. I would encourage council to inquire whether we're actually in PS&E, because PS&E occurs after project approval and the environmental document. And typically, analysis is done during that phase: traffic analysis, environmental analysis, community impact studies, visual impact studies, air quality, and vehicle miles traveled. Those are all done during the project development phase. So if we do go with this option, we can study those in the project development phase. And if a project has significant community impacts, you will have to analyze several alternatives anyway. So I guess we're just wanting to know, what does it hurt to include this as an option now? It's a concept design. Yeah, and I think, I feel, well, we feel, as currently designed, that it does have significant community impacts. That's why we're all here. Yeah, so I guess I would just stress that it's not just about the road, it's about our city and what we want to portray to others. I don't see why Yuba City or Caltrans or SAGCOG should dictate how we route the Fifth Street Bridge traffic through our town. And since so many people are already turning on J Street, it just seems like that would be the better way. So I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present this.
Thank you for the input. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your input.
Thank you. Do you have any, if you have any questions,
It's okay. Any questions from members?
I'm good.
Pretty clear.
Thank you.
I just want to ask staff, is there any clarifying things you want to make?
The project is in PS&E, and in addition, the associated environmental kind of, I think, statements, ultimately staff would have to do an environmental, and if we are to go through the various options, 1 through 4, We would then thereby do our analysis, and most indications, given that you're dealing with an existing roadway, you're not exacerbating the roadway condition, we take a categorical exemption through the process of California Environmental Quality Act and not have to do any level of additional review.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Stuart Gilchrist, and I'm a resident and business owner at 101 C Street in Marysville, California. How are you?
Love that building.
Thank you. Hello, residents. I urge citizens of Marysville and City Council to stand behind city staff and allow them to continue their focus on fine-tuning option 3. And I suggest one compromise incorporated into this plan. That compromise would be to maintain surface street parking along the 800 block of 5th Street. You know, this block cannot lose its front of the house parking at this time. So there's that. Other refinements would be traffic lights and pedestrian crossings in detailed areas with no bump outs on 5th, but off of 5th, where appropriate. And I am confident city staff has the ability to implement these refinements. Design option 3, as presented by city staff at their pop-up, has the best opportunity for working backwards, as other options 1 and 2 do not. Option 3, with refinements, in my humble opinion, would provide Marysville with a paved working corridor as soon as possible with no unnecessary delay. At the same time, give our city an exciting new addition to look forward to as we face new development that's coming. And most importantly, respect its users with subtle compromise. This design will also handle growing traffic issues. 5th Street was, after all, designed by our forefathers as a major artery, with its mass transit passenger train lines once running up and down it to D in either direction. Do not remove a fully operable emergency exit route from before a bridge, please. Include traffic lights. Oh, sorry. Where are we? After reviewing collision data, I suggest including traffic lights at 5th and F. I have heard that there will be pedestrian lighting. This is great. I-Street traffic collision issues will benefit from refinements within the historic overlay district 1 block to the north. Alley crossing issues would be eliminated with the islands as proposed in option 3. In other words, it's very dangerous to cross 5th off of all of those alleys. I used to live on Pine when I was 16, and I used to joke about how I could do it. It's very dangerous. We need to block those alleys from having crossings on 5th.
Good question, and I'll ask staff that. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up.
For those concerned with fire truck equipment passing through, as this is key, I suggest low barrier island at the 800 and 600 blocks, framing either side of the park, and the proposed fully landscape island with left turn lanes, naturally, at the 700 block. So that's basically where the park is. And by the way, for landscaping maintenance, I highly recommend palm trees and natural grasses. Those are the most affordable to use. All parking and pedestrian crossings outlined with paint. G Street crossing would have a specialty painted crosswalk with lights, but remain as is. No bump outs on 5th. Bump outs are an issue with the fire department. With the fast pace of the medical arts district development, other revisions and parking requirements will soon be obsolete. Option 3 handles this with refinements. We have 2 deadlines to meet, a bridge and a grant, and that's the SB1. What's already completed, and if you want me to go on, we've heard this. Let me walk you through it. We've already placed markings at 5th and the E Street northbound for 2 lanes coming onto 5th. By the way, its existence created the loss of an east turn lane onto 4th at E southbound, which works, is acceptable and in place. Traffic not using the 3rd Street corridor can also use 5th, as it's already arterial as it was designed as such. This infrastructure is in place and is all ready to function with option 3. Now the bridge construction. Coming from Yuba City, a dedicated lane immediately upon descent. In fact, it uses the incoming train underpass portal and will be marked accordingly. This gives its users a longer amount of right turn lane than ever before. And there are 2 lanes that you can turn right anyway, or go forward. I could go on, but I think it's pretty clear what we need to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, and thank you for your input and putting it in writing. Appreciate it. Any other comments from the public on this matter? Oh, you need to come up to the podium, please. Please state your name for the record.
Garner and Candy Trethaway. We live at 7th and G, which is halfway between the 2 bridges, halfway between the river and E Street. Okay, so we make left turns all the time to go home, and I'm always wondering if I'm going to get hit from behind. So here's what I would like to have for an improvement on 5th Street. So left turn lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, okay, like we have right now. And I'm imagining a new bridge will have 2 lanes coming down, and the bottleneck into 1 lane, to me, wouldn't work at all. Plus, if there's only 1 lane and you have parking, someone's going to stop and try to make a parallel park and hope that no one hits you. To me, that doesn't make any sense at all. Anyway, my concern would be, what I really like would be have left turn lanes and 2 lanes going both ways. And
thank you, sir.
Yeah,
and that's basically option 3, sir.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, but the parking issue seems like it's serving a small segment of our population, and I sympathize with them, but I just think if the city council could work on off-street parking, it seems like there's a lot of vacant or underused land around that could be used for off-street parking, and then option 3 doesn't really impact the businesses, so it seems like by far the best one. I can't see 1 lane coming from that bridge. Even if most of the traffic goes off, that's still a lot of traffic going through. So, yeah, to parallel park, you have to stop in 1 lane, then nobody can get around you. And what about accidents or breakdowns, you know? So
police.
we have a real concern about the one lane option, so.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Paul Guevara. I'm just here to say that I think we need another week to think about this. There's just a lot going into it, and I believe one of the focus should be is improving businesses instead of a highway for another city that I don't think we really use much, except when we go visit businesses elsewhere, when we should be working on building them up here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your input.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, everybody else. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you for...
What's your name, sir?
Oh, my name is Long Huynh, and I'm the owner of the Medicine Shop Pharmacy located on 812 5th Street. And so, you know, out of the 3 options, I know that they had mentioned that they liked option 3. I noticed that the island, you know, would block people from being able to turn left into my pharmacy in option 3. And I know traffic is, you know, there's a lot of traffic going through there, so, you know, I do appreciate that they mentioned that, you know, traffic does need to slow down a little bit. But,
that's a good point. Thank you for that.
Yeah, but thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. You know, one of the things was that I didn't know about the street change. It was a resident that came to my pharmacy to tell me that there's going to be a change to the street. I think it would have been nice if we would have been notified that there were going to be changes made to 5th Street as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
No, I think part of it is we haven't been funded for the dollars. It was just kind of, you know, we're going to put an application out there, but with that input of yours is really valuable.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Mickelson, and I'm the owner of the building of the medicine shop. Roy Lanza and I both own it, and the MAPCO store on Fifth Street. The parking issue is of the ultimate concern, that and having perhaps a center lane that you could pull over. I was thinking about the businesses there that have no parking lots, that they have to park in front. Mr. Chase came by for Bearing Belt and Chain. He has a lot of people with trucks with trailers that pull up in front to get parts and stuff that can't go in his parking lot. Asking people to park on side streets is difficult because there's a lot of residents around there. People like to park in front of the park. They want to take their kids to the park, and they might want to park on Fifth Street. It just seems like taking parking away is one of the worst possible things that can be done. We kind of liked the, there's kind of good things in all of these ideas, but to slow the traffic down somewhat, and as my husband said, who can't be here tonight, that he would like to see the traffic slowed down so that people would stay and perhaps shop along Fifth Street. I know that a lot of people go to the medicine shop, and without being able to turn in there, it is really a big problem. And people rush in there. We had somebody run all the way into the building this last year, and it cost us about $35,000 because they're hurrying in off of Fifth Street. So slowing that down is not such a bad idea. It's not the main corridor anymore. We don't have a train there. It's not 1850. And I think we really need to take a darn hard look at this thing and see, do we really want to change the personality of this street? Maybe enough so that it will encourage more businesses. These guys will lose their businesses if they don't have on-street parking. There's businesses right next door to us. There's 2 parking places in front of ours, but for John, for the empty buildings that he's got right next to me, which are for rent, where are you going to park? You have to park on the street. So I think that's pretty much it. I don't think it would present an insurmountable problem to change the traffic pattern. I think it just depends on what you want, and if you want a hot, speedy corridor to go down there and mash all up at E Street, then you're going to have a merging problem anyway. Let's get those people on 3rd and take them down past Roy's business and up on a entrance to the East Street Bridge. That is a corridor. So that's really where we're thinking, especially as property owners. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your input, ma'am. Any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Steve Whitmarsh. I run Bearing Belt Chain Company at 829 Fifth Street. Yesterday I wrote you all a letter telling you what I thought about these plans, and my main concerns were on-street parking, vehicle speed, and pedestrian safety. And based on those needs, my judgment was that option 1 served my needs the best of all. And on the other end, I judged that option 3, I wanted you to completely reject it for various reasons. But after hearing Mr. Bermudez's presentation and hearing this gentleman's comments behind me, I'm very excited about the option 4, because that would retain the on-street parking in my part of Fifth Street, where we have businesses that need the on-street parking. And I actually had a discussion with the traffic engineer earlier today by happenstance over lunch, and his opinion was the islands down at the eastern end of the street would be better served down there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we come up with, and hopefully we don't have to wait a whole week to see what that looks like.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming down.
Go, Stat.
We're all here. Good evening. My name is John Keeber, and I'd like to make a few comments on the reducing the lane concept. Reducing Fifth Street from 4 to 2 lanes will decrease capacity and likely increase congestion, especially at H Street, where the number of vehicles able to travel through the signalized intersection will be cut in half. If traffic gets so bad on 5th Street, will some motorists choose to use other streets, like 6th Street, to avoid delays? Merging issues will be created since the double left turns coming from East Street will have to be funneled into one lane. Over the past 40 years, the population in the Twin Cities has increased significantly. With more people comes more traffic. Yet, there have been few street and roadway projects to compensate for the additional vehicles. The new 5th Street Bridge is being built to provide 2 lanes in each direction. Yuba City is pursuing widening Bridge Street to 4 lanes between Gray Avenue and Cooper Avenue. Maintaining 4 lanes on 5th Street in Marysville will provide a second multi-lane east-west arterial in the Yuba Sutter area, which will offer a viable alternative to Highway 20, which is heavily congested more and more of the time. Millions of dollars are being invested to improve our local transportation. In the context of funding priorities in California, that our area secured enough funding to replace and upgrade the 5th Street Bridge is more remarkable than most people realize. Marysville needs to support these improvements, not derail them by removing lanes from 5th Street. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your... One heck of a guitar player at church.
And he's a traffic engineer.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Mayor, City Council, I rise tonight merely for the fact my friends have businesses down on the 5th Street corridor, and I would greatly appreciate you maintaining their parking. I would like to see the speed reduced. My biggest concern is those businesses losing their parking. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
Kelly Rich Creek. I live in downtown Marysville. Thank you. Since I'm in favor more of the 3-lane option, and due to the SACOC encourages projects such as alternative as this, it gives higher scores to implement such elements of this complete street, so it makes sense. I'm also curious as to why we weren't informed earlier on about the CE being produced. Why were community impacts not analyzed during CEQA? If the environmental impacts, including community impacts, are not analyzed to the level required by law, CEQA, the environmental document, and the project can be jeopardized, sometimes even sued. There's been cases of that. So no other option but to include this alternative cannot rewind time and produce higher level documents for circulation to public with the period of public comment review. And I thank you again for allowing the public to speak. Also, the plan also fits in with our vision in the bounce back community, as this is just a guide, but of course the whole book is on revitalization for the whole town of Marysville. But specifically for that area, it's at E and 5th. It talks about making central Marysville walkable and revitalized. Multimodal access, which is another term for complete streets. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your time. Any other comments from the public?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, councilmen, staff, and audience. Russell Hogue just had a few comments. One of the things that just from the Planning Commission meeting last Thursday, the biggest things I heard from the citizens in the area were speed, safety, all those concerns. Like I said, they were saying historically 2/3 of the traffic goes across 3rd Street, so that with, no matter what we do, directing 2 right lanes over there would help and get the traffic off of there. One of the concerns I had was at the pop-up. Well, a couple things about the pop-up. One, when I walked in there, I was really surprised not to see any. There was basically no business owners off of 5th Street. And that kind of concerned me. I mean, this is going to directly impact all their businesses, and nobody took the time to notify them. I walked the street, a few days later and asked them, hey, did you get anything? They're like, no. So they didn't, have any notification, which kind of concerned me. When they opened their businesses, they wouldn't have been allowed to open their businesses if they didn't have that parking. And now we're looking at plans, 2/3 of the plans projected by staff take away that parking. So are you going to close their business because they don't have parking? I mean, you wouldn't have allowed them to open it without parking, and now you're looking at taking it away. So kind of concerned me. The other thing that came up there was that we got the 5th Street Bridge project coming down. We're looking at the 5th Street corridor. And then down the road, we really need to do a traffic study to look at the whole traffic plan through Marysville. Seems like, maybe that could have been done sooner. And before, we'd known the 5th Street Bridge was coming for quite some time. So was a little concerned why the public input was at the very end of this project for the most part. We're down to the wire, and why wasn't there more public input at the beginning where could have had more planning and looked at that. SACOG funding, looking at some of that. So there's 54 million being talked about. It's 3 million per project, so most of you gets 3, which is probably why they're shooting for about 2.8, which is about right. But the other part is that you have to have 11.47% match with that, so that's about 350,000. So, and that can't come out of that 750, I guess, if that's planning. So I'm just make sure we have that somewhere. One of the things that Chairman Bells has said at the Planning Commission meeting, it kind of stuck with me, is whatever we do with 5th Street, we're going to live with that for 20, 30, 40 years. Whatever we do now, that's going to be Marysville. And is that the Marysville we want? I like the plan brought about by the citizens, and would like to help promote that. And thank you for your time and hearing us speak today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more comments?
Evening, Mayor John Nicoletti, 1915 Bolton Way. I'm a levy commissioner. If a levee breaks in the city of Marysville, within 30 minutes, it'll be impassable. No vehicle traffic can move. It doesn't happen often, but if you've lived here, it's happened. 86, 97, spillway incident, it happens. And I've heard the loudness of the people that want to change this particular roadway to something different than its actual purpose. But I've also heard the loudness of the people that were stuck trying to evacuate and not able to get out in time. And I think that is a critical responsibility that we cannot ignore. You have a 4-lane access point that goes east-west, you only have 2 of them. So if you want to choke that down in the middle of population growth and everything else that's been mentioned by John and even pointed out with Stuart's explanation, you just can't ignore the emergency services aspect of this and having to move people as efficiently and as quickly as possible.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? We truly do appreciate the comments. I know I do, and they're very valuable. So at this point, I'd like to close comments from the public, if that's all right. And like to hear from the council members on what their thoughts are, so we can give staff direction and hopefully have a proposal ready for us to be able to vote on next week.
A couple things. I was trying to come in open-minded to this fifth plan, I guess it would be, the 3 lanes, but I was actually sold that it would probably not be very safe for a couple reasons, and maybe Chief Sachs can address these two issues. The first one that I thought was a very important one was anybody trying to parallel park off of one lane. It was going to back up, most likely back up the traffic, anybody trying to get in. And secondly, the gentleman that was concerned about people making a left turn into his parking lot, I think the medicine shop it was, I'm not sure. Isn't that crossing over, that's an illegal left turn anyway, isn't it? Crossing over a double line to get into his parking? So I was just concerned about those two things, and where you stand on those. And then I'll finish with, I'd like to hear the answer on those two issues, but then I'll just finish with, I still think that our supposed 4, which is 3 with the parking looked at a little different, by far would be the best way to go. But I would like to hear your response on those two things.
So in reference to the double yellows, I would have to double check there. I'm not positive at that location if it does allow for it. However, even if there is a center divide at that location, or there's a concrete barrier, that business is one business from the corner of a major intersection, which is H Street. So you can make a left or a right turn there, park in the open parking lot that's right behind it for that facility and walk in it. So there's no on-street parking for them there in front of that facility. They do have a parking lot in front of their, in the medicine shop. So the person went into the building, that's because they hit the gas. It goes with one lane on the public safety side, at least I'm going to speak for the police department, not the fire department. We have that same problem right now with the Fifth Street Bridge. That's why it's getting rebuilt and we're going to 2 lanes each direction. When it's one lane on the bridge and we have a crash in the middle of that bridge, we have to stop and run all the way up to the middle of that bridge right now. With all of our first responders, we can't go in the opposite lane because cars go over the center median because they're too impatient to wait for us and they come back down this side. So you'll see us park at the bottom with fire and medics, and we're literally carrying all of our stuff and running 3/4 of the way across the bridge to get to the accident scene. So that's why part of it, the reasoning of the Fifth Street Bridge is we're going 2 lanes. So now if we're going to go to 1 lane in the middle of our city, we're going to run into the same issues. If we only have 1 lane each direction, whether it's parallel parking, you're going to pull up and someone's going to stop to try to back into it, you're going to back up traffic. But if we have any emergencies that happen and we have to get to it and you have a center divide and you have parking, it's only 1 lane, we're stopping where everybody else is stopped and we're getting out and we're hoofing it to wherever we need to get to try to provide emergency medical aid to people. So those are some concerns that I would see with 1 lane in each direction. And I just, it does draw a lot of concern on that side of it. Now, whether it's fire, I mean, their engines are a lot bigger than our cars. Maybe they can move some of those cars out of the way. But they've got to get close enough to put out the fire. If they can't, then, it's another mitigating factor that we would look at, so.
Good, thank you.
Your question, though.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Anything else, sir?
No.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Would you like to make comment?
I would, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank the mayor for allowing the public to address the council. That was very important. And that was my whole issue on all these, that the public did not have an opportunity to verse and express their concerns. So in saying that, I lean toward the option 3 with the caveat of the parking issue and also with improved lighting. And I think that if you experienced the last evacuation from the city of Marysville, I experienced the first one in '97, and I experienced the second one last couple of years ago. In the traffic, you would have drowned if that bridge would have broke. I mean, that dam would have broke. There's no way you can move. You're backed up all the way into District 10. We've got to have access to get people out of here. And if we took 2-lane highway and converted to 4-lane to get them going one way, we could evacuate them. And you need to understand too, they do come in from Yuba City into here to go out to Highway 70 and out 65. So I lean toward the 3 with the changes I've expressed and for the public safety issue. And I think the chief was right on, because you can't, there was an accident on the East Street Bridge last year, and the law enforcement was trying to drop traffic. People were jumping the median, trying to get on the other side. Fire trucks couldn't get out there. It was horrible. And so, we got to think about that. And Mr. Nicoletti was exactly right on the issue of getting out evacuation. We got to get people out of this community. And I think Marysville sitting as a teacup in about 11 minutes if a levee breaks will be inundated. So you got to get out. And that's why I'm leaning toward this. It's a public safety issue, but again, also allowing the people to speak to this issue. And thank you very much for allowing that.
Thank you. Councilmember Hudson?
So, I'm leaning more towards option one, as I see it, just because of the fact of what was shared with emergency response and so forth. Business is key in the city of Marysville. And if we, A, take away their parking, and B, restrict access to those businesses, they will be affected. I mean, case in point, there was a couple businesses on Lindenhurst Boulevard. As soon as they put that meridian right down the middle right there, it became very difficult to be able to do U-turns and so forth and come back into the business, drive back halfway down the block and get in. I mean, accessibility, I'd like to see something with a center lane that could be used for left turns, merging and so forth, and being able to get across as well as keep your parking. It is a main artery. And speaking from my personal experience of driving large vehicles for 25 years, it's very difficult to get them to move out of your way when you got lights going. And if it's a different department now, but when I used to work at the department, fire department, we did not drive 10th Street and we did not drive E Street because of the fact that the center curb that was right there, we could not get traffic out of the way. So if we narrow this artery, I get aesthetics and I get the opportunity to work on aesthetics, but here's the thing, logistics and just accessibility for what's going on. It's a main artery. We restrict that artery for response from departments coming in or departments going out or pedestrians coming in or pedestrians going out. It does look good, but I push towards option one with a center lane that you can still make left-hand turns into and so forth.
I don't think that's available.
It's not quite available on option one as it says, but I mean, if it could be potentially considered, not putting the concrete meridian down the center is where I'm kind of pushing. Keeping 2 lanes going each direction. And if you do have to restrict parking in front of the park or in front of the hospital right there so you can get some left-hand turns, I'm game with that.
Okay.
I do believe it does need to stick with the pedestrian activated lights and so forth, just for their crossability. The corners would be nice if they were amended with more ADA ramp kind of situations. I just don't see a major need to change, but again, I'm one person.
No, I appreciate that, but I think we're pretty close in the sense that parking is important because the businesses are there. In my mind, we have to solve the hospital parking, which is most of those the demand is from the folks that visit, work, and do. And so
With respect, I'd say that's 2 different problems, though.
It's 2 different problems, and I guess that's what I'm trying to get to maybe come, to try to compromise. I see the need for the smaller businesses towards the bridge, and I think option 4, hopefully when we see it, will maybe solve some of those issues, and we'll still be able to have the left turn lanes available for some of our residents to live, across the street from the park and stuff. So thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take your time, sorry, but I think we're pretty much there.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see what option 4 provides. I do appreciate the residents presenting what they had. It was nice to see something, presented, because I'd heard scuttlebutt about it, but I hadn't seen anything. So that was a good opportunity, and I do appreciate staff kind of presenting these options right here, but I'd like to see a tweakage of what this 4th option looks like. I'm a little confused on this timeline thing, so maybe we can have a little clarification at that later. We don't have to hash it out right now, so I can have an understanding as to why that decision needs to be kind of made sooner than later. Okay, but I'd do business, parking, and safety would make it sure.
Vice Mayor?
I liked the option 3 with the modifications for parking. I'm excited about seeing that too, and I was happy that Mr. Whitmarsh was happy about seeing that, because that's a concern for all of us. I'm sure that none of us want to make it harder for our business people to do business, but we do also want it to be safe. And so I love that, having that middle turn lane, because I always think, uh-oh, I can't be in the left lane when I'm driving down Fifth Street, because I'm going to get stuck behind that red light. So I like that option, and one of the primary concerns I had about reducing it to 1 lane was that very thing about that's an emergency route, and it's also it's built to convey traffic smoothly through the city. That we had the East Street double lane turning onto Fifth for that purpose. So to narrow that down would defeat the purposes of all the planning that we've been doing so far. So I like the 4 lanes, keeping it to 4 lanes, and we also have 10th Street Bridge sometimes shutting down for different reasons, so we can't close that down. So I like the number 3 and with the number 4 coming. So thank you so much for explaining it so well too. I feel like tonight's been really great for the community to see the work and the competency of our staff in planning. So thank you very much for being awesome.
Thank you. There's a couple of things I wanted to point to. The matching is my understanding, and I may be wrong, but I believe that we're part of the disadvantaged community, and I believe the matching is not going to be necessary for us. But if you can ask SACOG that and clarify that for us for the 21st.
That's a correct statement.
Yeah, that's a correct statement, right?
Correct.
So we won't need the match. I think the other thing, and I really do appreciate the input of staff. I know, I'm the public. I know there seemed to have it raised to a different level that I don't think it really needed to be. That public did have input. Could we have done better and reached out to the businesses? Probably, but there was more opportunities during the planning session. There was opportunities here. So it's great to see the residents and business owners being here and providing the input, and I hope you guys understand that we are listening and we are taking your input into consideration as we move forward. I know staff, I think, also have heard clearly on what some of the residents and business owners' needs are. They're also interested in assuring that public safety is maintained for access and diverting traffic when there's accidents and so on. So we have to be part of the entire region, and this is part of us being able to being part of the transportation needs of this community. For that reason, I look forward to the 4th option that will help some of the smaller businesses, give them some parking. But we do have a bigger problem that another problem that we're gonna have to solve, and that's mitigating this parking issue in that corridor or the entire, that Fifth Street Health Arts district that we're calling this, because we know that the time is right and the market's going to see this as great opportunities to invest, and there's going to be growth there, and we're going to have to figure out the best way to solve that issue for the big picture of this whole thing. So thank you so much, staff, for working on this. Thank you for the public for their input, and I believe you guys have some direction, sir?
Yes.
So let's move on. So we're not even in the action items, and I know there's folks here for some of the public hearings. I try to move them up in the agenda. I can only do so much, but let's move forward. We're going to go to item 5, Community Consent Calendar Forum. We ask individuals wishing to address the City Council concerning consent calendar items or any matters not already in the agenda. We do invite you to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. When you are called, we ask you to please go to the podium and give your name clearly for audio recording. You are requested to address your comments to the council and not to the audience. We do let you know that by state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you would like a response from the council, please fill out a speaker's card and you will be contacted within the next few days. Members of the public like to make comments on Items not on the agenda or those on the consent calendar? Sir. Chief, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
Wow.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, City Council, staff. My name is Dale Vogelsang, resident of Yuba County, retired fire chief. And with so much going on in our community, every day we watch the news, and I'm here to bring you a positive message. Thank you. Congratulations, and bravo Zulu, a term from the military, for being an example of effective government. I get the opportunity to travel throughout the state teaching future leaders in the fire service. And every single class I teach, I bring up Marysville. I bring up Measure C. I bring up the ballot language up on a screen so they can read it for themselves and look at other ballot language from other cities and agencies. And they tell me, is this a general tax or is this a special tax? And tell me why. We did it right in Marysville. I've seen the Measure C report. Everybody knows where that money's going. You're doing what you said you would do. That's what the public wants, and that's what the public needs. It needs transparency, and I appreciate that. From budget management to being responsive to citizen concerns, everything from animal control to level of service. You address it, and you have a dialogue. The folks speaking here tonight, it's difficult to come up here and speak to council. But that's what we need to hear. That's what you need to hear so that you can understand what their concerns are. What I've found in my travels is the key to success is having effective, respectful dialogue. You need to talk it out. You need to hear what the concerns are, but that dialogue needs to be respectful. We need to understand different perspectives, and we heard many tonight about this one issue. Sometimes it's difficult to hear differing opinions, but we need to look at the whole picture, and you do that. So I commend you for that. As the city continues to capitalize on entrepreneurial concepts like using groundwater to water our parks and looking at every opportunity to make the city better, I commend you. I appreciate your work and your leaders in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
That was nice to hear.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tracy Jacobson. My husband and I are the owners of Viking Woodworks at 317 D Street here in Marysville. I came to this city in January and saw our community garden. I had visited the Yuba City Community Garden, and it was absolutely beautiful. And walking down C Street one day, I came across this lot that was overgrown with weeds. I contacted the city and trying to figure out who owned this, why it was abandoned, and met with the city and agreed to purchase the rest of the plots that were available with the understanding that I would maintain the entire garden. I have come in since February and renovated the garden. We have brought it back to life. It is fully planted now with the exception of 2 plots in the back. My kids in all of our classes have been out there. If you drive down during the day, you see kids playing hide and seek and running through the garden. Our gardening classes have planted most of the crops that are out there. We've gotten grants from different organizations to put things into the garden for children. We have transformed this space into a place for our kids to be able to come into Marysville and be able to play in a safe and nice environment. I was told in January when I took over the garden that I was assigned as the garden coordinator. I came to the city to announce a garden reopening, that I wanted to do a grand opening, and was told that paperwork was never filed. So in working with Marty, we went through the garden rules and guidelines to figure out how to make that change. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago, and I was voted in as the garden coordinator for the Marysville Community Garden. That paperwork is in all of your packets here tonight, that change has occurred. We are having a garden grand opening next Saturday. I'm super hoping that the rain holds off. We have gotten a grant from the First Five of Yuba County to build a humongous toddler mud kitchen out there that My husband is constructing in the shop since it's going to be raining this next week. But we are promising that that garden will be up and going on the 25th. There will be free face painting, crafts for the kids, free barbecue, so we invite all of you guys to come out, check out what we've done, bring your kids and bring your family. But it is definitely going to be a place that will be open during public hours for the community to come and enjoy. So thank you. You guys have been wonderful to work with. We opened our business exactly a year ago next month. I've worked with Marty and Ricky and Chief Sachs a lot, and I can't say better things about this city. Anybody asks how it is to do business in Marysville, and I say it's wonderful. We couldn't be happier. We haven't had any problems. If I have a problem, I come to you guys, you fix it, you answer my questions, and we are very, very thankful. So thank you.
Thank you. I am so happy about what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Judy Mann.
Russ Hogue.
Russ Hogue. And on behalf of the Focus on Marysville and the Mary Aaron Museum, we would like to thank the city for helping waive partially the fees for our 4th annual historic fair. One of the highlights were the tours. People enjoyed it and they were successful. With the funds earned from the tours, they will go towards some of the expenses we accrued. Just the tours alone brought people from 5 different counties, from 9 different cities. I took a log of everybody that came in. Visitors from South Carolina came. They happened to have been here this weekend, and they enjoyed the fair.
The book authors and showing the documentary film, The Hamilton Boys, in the Packard Library brought in some revenue to only give back to the community by way of a scholarship in the name of the Robert Criddle Scholarship Fund, whom a Marysville student will receive upon graduation and completing a historical project.
I would like to remind you that this event is solely run by volunteers, including the entertainment and the musicians. The venues used for the tours and for the exhibits were alone for the day. Of course, we had to buy the expense of the insurance. As you know, and as you can see, it takes more than 2 people to put on an event. Together, it's hard work. But in order to make it successful, it takes a community working together.
We thank all that were involved. We also thank, again, the city staff guiding us through this year's process. Judy's run it pretty much in the past, and I was helping out this year. Definitely needed a little help, but you all were great to work with. We thank you for helping us share and rediscovering our local history. Ask you to mark in your calendars, save the date, May 9th, 2020, for next year's 170th celebration. I want to thank Viking Woodworks again for all the work they did on the garden. It was open during the historic fair and helped add to that. And again, as I've said in the past, we're seeing a lot of good things out of the city staff and city council as far as being business friendly, and that's what we really need to get Marysville back on track and keep it growing. So we do appreciate all that.
So we say again, thanks for working with us, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Well, that was good. Good to see Dale. Any other comments? Seeing none, I do appreciate the positive and constructive comments, especially for staff. I know they work pretty hard. As you can tell by the packet this week, they probably spent a lot of time working on things. Let's move to consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine, are therefore approved by one motion unless a council member or the city manager first requests that a matter be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. Did I skip a portion of it? Because it wasn't there. What's the will of the council?
Move to consent. Second.
All together.
Motion by Simmons, second by Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think we're going to go to Item 7, I do want to let the public know that we are removing item 13B from the council agenda, and I guess I'd like to entertain a vote to make that change. If that's, is there anything else that needs to be postponed?
I was going to suggest, because it's a little late, I thought maybe, I wrote down a few.
Okay,
If you want to do
go ahead.
8C,
Postpone 8C,
8D.
8D,
8C, did you say?
8C, 8D, 8E, and 11.
is that okay with the council?
Sure.
We're gonna postpone for next meeting, 8C, 8D, 8E, item 11, and remove, item, if that's okay with the council, I'd like to entertain a motion to make those adjustments. Motion by the vice mayor.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion's approved with a 5-0. Okay. We'll get out here one day, over the rainbow.
Mr. Mayor, could you just mention those numbers again?
Yes, sir. We are postponing 8C, 8D, 8E, and 11, and also 13B.
So if we came here to talk about 8C, C is in Charlie, you're not going to hear it?
That's correct, sir. Because we're at 10 o'clock right now? What time is it? And we got a long one to go, sir. But if you want to make comments on C, we can hear them now, or we can wait till next week.
Are we taking an action on it?
No, we're not going to take an action on it. It's been voted on. Okay, let's move to, okay, where am I? Public hearing, right? Item 7?
7A.
7A is, a public hearing regarding resolution approving changes to fee schedule. Recommendation from staff is to hold a public hearing and receive public comments regarding changes to fee schedule. The action may include resolution 2019-22, adopting the fee schedule with the recommendation changes and rescind all resolutions in conflict therewith. Sir, Chief?
Mr. Mayor, council members, I will speak fast so we can get out of here. So we have done a comprehensive analysis of our fee schedule as we do every year. And this, what we're doing is conducting a notice of a public hearing to receive comments from anybody about the proposed changes that we have in here, which is in the attachment. And then also request that we adopt resolution 2019-22 for this fee schedule based on the recommended changes. The highlights are animal license fees. There's a small increase there. There's a small increase on the live skin because now we check FBI for all of our cannabis businesses, and that went from $83 to $100 on the state side, so we are passing that cost off to them. Same with solicitor fees, and we added a DUI recovery section. The government code allows us to, if we respond or the fire department responds to a traffic collision and it's DUI related, when we can recoup cost from that DUI driver if there's an emergency response and it's a traffic collision, so up to $12,000 maximum. It doesn't go to their insurance, it's actually a penalty for the person itself. So we are adding these fees and making these adjustments to stay on par with people in the region. We're still below in the region. I mean, if you look at the vehicle release fee, I think it's $395 at Yuba City and we're proposing $250, so. With that, I'd entertain any questions you have. But there's
Questions for the chief? No. Seeing no questions, I'd like to open up Public hearing. Members of the public like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. With that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-22. Motion by Vice Mayor, second by Councilmember Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion's approved with a vote of 5-0. Now let's move to public hearing 7B, public hearing regarding a general plan amendment from urban open space to commercial and zoning map, amendments from C3 general commercial to CH highway service commercial, permitting the operation of emergency shelter at 131 F Street. There's multiple recommendations brought to us by staff. One is to conduct hearing and receive public comment. We're being asked to certify that the City Council has reviewed and considered the proposed mitigated negative declaration and has determined that the mitigated negative declaration reflects the independent judgment of the city as lead agency under CEQA. 3, recommend that the City Council adopt Resolution 2019-23, amending the general plan land use diagram from urban space to commercial. 4, recommend that the City Council waive first reading and introduction ordinance number 1417, amending the Marysville zoning map from C3 general commercial to CH highway service commercial. This report comes from our Community Development Services Director, Mr. Bermudez. Sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for going through the various action that we would have to take independently upon approval. We should approve the particular general plan amendment and rezone of the property. As way of historical, this particular project, which is a 26-bed emergency shelter, came to the city last fall, late summer, and the applicant Habitat for Humanity was pursuing an emergency shelter at this particular location. After back and forth and design details and the parameters of the project being worked out, we were able to bring it forward to you for a public hearing. In addition, most recently on April 10th of 2019, the Planning Commission held a public hearing for the project related to a conditional use permit. In addition, the Planning Commission also made a recommendation to forward on the general plan land use diagram, as well as the Marysville zoning map amendment that would allow for an emergency shelter in the highway service commercial zone. The action before the council tonight is not the conditional use permit. To make that clear, I think I provided a paragraph within the staff report that made it clear what your action for tonight. The conditional use permit has been approved by the Planning Commission, and it is all contingent, really, what ultimately this council would like to do with the zoning of the particular property. It's noted in the report that we realize that there is an inconsistency within the general plan as well as the zoning. And this inconsistency is related to the urban park designation that's in the general plan. We did what we could to research how that came about, and we basically could not determine. So from a consistency standpoint and state law standpoint, we should, as staff and as a council, make an action to actually bring about consistency with your general plan diagram as well as the particular property. So we would recommend that we move forward with the general plan designation regardless of whatever the merits weigh out of this particular project. So in doing so, that would be one action that we would recommend definitely council approve moving forward. In regards to the rezone of the property, the rezone actually would take this particular property to a highway service zoning, which when you look at the code, it does allow for emergency shelter subject to a conditional use permit. When looking and researching out compatible uses surrounding this particular property, as well as talking with the applicant regarding their particular project, one thing that I think we all agreed upon at the table was it is the ability of staff where we could have brought this up as a basic zone change that would have outright permitted this particular use. But given the site conditions, the surrounding adjacency of this particular property and the type of land use, we all agreed overwhelmingly that we wanted to take it forward as a conditional use permit. In addition, the reasons for that as well of adjacency issues is to layer in conditions of approval with that particular project, assure surrounding residents that their concerns were heard, and to the best of staff's ability as in the city can provide, address mainly what I included in the staff report is quite a bit of concern about public safety of this particular facility being changed to allow for an emergency shelter. Quite a bit robust discussion with the Planning Commission. We layered in, as I mentioned, conditions of approval. The applicant has agreed to those conditions. The applicant is working with the police department on various security components that are required per the conditions. So in staff's mind and in the commission's mind, based on a 4-2-1 vote, the project was approved for a conditional use permit. That said, in moving this particular forward for action tonight, staff would recommend that we complement that particular approval with changing out the zoning to a highway service commercial, which thereby would make an emergency shelter a conditional use per the city's zoning and land use requirements. So at this point, unless there's specific questions related to the operation of the facility, which the applicant is available in here, I included an operation plan as well as the prior staff report that reflects the conditions of approval. And I also included the neighbors' concerns and comments, as well as a memorandum from the police department and the chief of police related to his and the department's assessment of all the security concerns. So in staff's mind, we believe that this project should move forward and that the city council should move forward with the general plan amendment and rezoning of the property. At this point, this concludes staff's presentation. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
There's one question, the legal question. Will this help us in our issue about homeless camping on public land? Now, do we have a facility that allows us to enforce our ordinance?
Well, it's definitely be helpful there's two components to that.
Yeah, I'm just talking about that.
Once I know that we're working, the region's working to work on one ordinance that we can all agree on, and that's being worked on among all the legal folks, and the bi-county meetings are going over that. And so that's going to help us have kind of a one thing that all the regions will be working on, just because it's the best way to work that through. We're not there yet because of what the courts has been saying on camping ordinances and what is needed for us to be able to enforce some of those camping ordinances. We have to have shelter beds for them, but then again, once we have that full ordinance, we'll be able to kind of move forward with everyone, all the police department, with our not only enforcement, but our prevention and all the work that all the different organizations are doing. We'll be all on the same page, kind of helping each other out. I'm not sure if that answered your question.
Well, my question is, we're restricted from enforcing our camping ordinance because we don't have a facility to have people to house these people overnight for 8 hours. Will this suffice to satisfy that court order?
I think our program is really big, but this is going to help in the right direction.
Okay, so are we saying legally, are we saying we can enforce our camping ordinance now? Maybe that has to be something you have to research and get back to us.
The short answer is yes. So how it would operate is we support this project and there is a certain amount of bed space that's available. Under the case law, providing there's current bed space available at the time we're going to enforce the specific camping violation, we would have to know that at the time. So if it was at max capacity and there was no bed space available, we would not be able to enforce it. However, if we called over there and there was one bed open and we had somebody that was violating the camping ordinance, they actually have an option. They go there or they get cited, and we could enforce it. So I've been talking to city legal staff in reference to that. This helps us get in the right direction. So on the enforcement side of things and giving them a place to go, but also getting them in front of our storefronts and our businesses as well. So I hope that answers your question. So
how many hours are they going to get to stay in this facility? is really the question. They're gonna have 8 hours and they have to move out and come back the next day and stand in line? What's the?
That's an operational thing. I know there's folks here.
I know he's here, Joseph's here, and.
Yeah, we can have them respond to that side of it, but our side of it is we would be able to start looking at those possibilities as long as there's.
Well, that really doesn't have anything on this ordinance. It's just some questions I had to know. I'm not gonna hold it up. They can get the answers back, give it to us next week, as far as I'm concerned.
But the operations, you want to know what the operation looks
Yeah,
like?
I'd like to know how long they're gonna stay there, and then can we enforce the.
Can someone speak about the operations of the facility? What it looks like, what you guys are planning?
Evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Rick Milholland. I'm the Executive Director for Hands of Hope. I currently oversee both day centers, homeless day centers for Hands of Hope, one on Spiva and one in partnership with Habitat for Humanity at the 131 F Street site. The program, we're looking to model it kind of like 14 Forward, with a certain amount of time they can stay there, depending on their progress in the program, because our whole focus is to get them from off the streets and into housing. So they come in, we give them a 21-day stint. If they're doing well, if they're doing their job searches, if they're going to classes, if they're staying on the track, they can stay. We're looking at keeping several beds open for emergency situations. So if you have those situations where they're down at the river bottoms and you got somebody you got to move out, they can be brought to the shelter. One of the concerns that they had about at the Planning Commission was about the safety issues. Right now, we're 9 to 3:30, Monday through Friday. When we're not there, we have no ability to oversee what's going on at the facility. If we're 24/7, we have staff on site 24/7. So there'll be a lot of the traffic around the building when we're closed cut down.
Yeah, if I might respond to that real quick. My concern is getting the homeless out of public property and have some place for them to spend 8 hours. We had 2 respite areas and that was a disaster. Now, you guys are making residency programs for them for so many days. That really doesn't help our problem. That's all I was looking for. I'm not criticizing, I just want, we need some facilities where we put these people overnight and get them off the streets and destroying public property.
I
And I was
completely
hoping
agree.
that this would be a methodology of doing that. Thank you, Mayor.
Joseph Hill with Habitat for Humanity. Just to kind of piggyback off of what Rick was saying, one of the things we are planning on doing is having bed spaces available to both Adventist Health and the Marysville Police Department. So when that situation does occur, they can make the call and enforce the camping ordinance to that ability. So to the best of their ability. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any other questions from council members? Seeing none, I'd like to open up the forum for public comments. Pro, against, for it?
Good evening. My name is Terry Howard. I'm Director of Case Management at Adventist Health and Ride Out. And we actually support the start of a 24-bed unit at the Coordinated Entry Center. In January, the state of California passed Senate Bill 1152, which mandated that the hospitals initiate really specific discharge planning for our homeless population. We have to feed our homeless population who cross the threshold of our emergency room within 2 hours of them being discharged. We have to make sure that we provide weather-appropriate clothing for them upon discharge. We need to connect them to housing upon discharge if they have no housing. And you know, in this geographic area, there's really very limited resources. This center is, right down the street from the hospital, and we have quite a few medically frail homeless people, and this will go a long way in making sure they end up in safe housing for a period of time. You know, when this bill passed, I think Adventist Health and Ride Out, we sat down with our Director of Emergency Services, and we thought we would see 5 homeless patients a day in our emergency room. We are seeing up to 20 homeless patients a day in our emergency room, and providing clothing and food and making sure that they have the prescriptions that they need to have a safe discharge. So again, I just want to support this service, and please, if there's any other opportunity to provide housing for these people besides the river bottoms. I think as we we run a street nurse program that we collaborate, and we have nurses and patient care coordinators in both of these homeless centers to provide support and connect these patients and folks to community resources so they have what they need moving forward. I think we've been pretty successful in collaborating with the insurance plans in the geographic area and making sure that we connect them to benefits. We have been able to find jobs for some of these folks. We have actually been able to triage 25 patients that we have seen in both centers to the emergency room for care because they would not have gone if we hadn't sent them. So I think it's a great collaboration that Adventist Health and Rideout has with both Hands of Hope and the Life Skills Center, and we'd like to continue that. And the housing will just go to enhance the services in this area. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments? Seeing none, oh, hi, sorry. The gavel was ready, look at it, it's ready.
It's been a very long night. I'm Laura Furry from California Rural Legal Assistance. I'm going to be very brief because it's been a heck of a long night for all of us, and my prepared remarks are gone from my mind at this point. I just want to say briefly that CRLA works with a lot of homeless folks in this area, and there's many reasons why people are homeless. Not going to go into it. 100% of our clients want to be housed. We strongly support this proposal. The one thing I would like to point out is how I think respectful this proposal is, how carefully the concerns of the neighborhood have been taken into consideration by staff, by all the partners working on this. This is a very conservative proposal that gives you power and control to make sure that this is a well-run facility. So that's all I will say, other than I do support it and wish it all the luck, hopefully once it's passed.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Hi.
My name is Ashton Phillips, and I am the patient care coordinator who works out in the street nurse program. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we go down to the Life Building Center. We also go to Hands of Hope. We are there in the morning, and we work directly with these clients every single day. We have seen a total of 211 new clients through this program. We have connected them to many, many services because they are there to look for services, to get housed, to find jobs, to get that help. I run across individuals who are unsafe to be on the streets, and to have nowhere to send them is really hard. I am emotional about this because I am really connected to these individuals. I really, really care for them and who they are and for their safety. To have a woman come to me and not be able to have anywhere to go, send them to Orville, is really, really difficult. To have an individual who can't go to the mission for one reason or another based on their rules is really, really difficult for me to have nowhere to have these individuals go to be supported. So I think adding additional beds to this community is really, really important, and doing that with a center that is already open, already operating, and already has the staff. The staff there is wonderful. The staff there cares, has all the services come there. They have a calendar. If you guys haven't seen the calendar, it is absolutely amazing with all the services that they provide. And to connect those individuals who are not connected to those services is extremely important to get them in there. So I am in 100% support, and so are all the individuals and all the clients that I work with every single day. Something that wasn't really mentioned here is, with addition to that zoning, there are going to be more showers and more bathrooms. Right now there's one. So getting those individuals in there to get clean and stay clean, have the ability to take a shower and to use the restroom facilities is very, very important. It's something that they want, something that they need in order to go and get a job. I have individuals that come in, it opens at 9 o'clock. They have to be back at the mission, or they have to be at their camps at a certain time. And when do they have time? They have to come and wait on this list for a shower that's going to take, I don't know, a couple hours to be able to take a shower. And then they have 2 hours to job search. So that, to me, opens up a lot of abilities as well. So I'm in full support, and these individuals are also in full support. I speak for them and all the people that I work with every single day. So thank you guys so much for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, I'd like to close public hearing if there's no other comments. So you're gonna have to guide me through this, sir. Do we need a motion to certify that the city council has reviewed and considered the proposed mitigated negative declaration?
Yes.
I'd like to entertain that motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Simmons, second by Mr. Baracawoli. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. You're next.
I'd also like to entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-23, amending the general plan land use diagram from urban space to commercial. Motion by the Vice Mayor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0. Lastly, this is first I'd like to recommend, entertain a motion to waive the first reading of ordinance number 1417.
Make a motion.
Motion. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Ordinance number 1417, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Marysville amending the zoning map from General Commercial C3 to Highway Service Commercial CH on 0.31 acre lot located at 131 F Street, APN 010272006.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to introduce ordinance 1417 for a second reading and adoption. Motion by Vice Mayor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0. Thank you, everyone.
Good.
We're good. Let's move to item 8A, a resolution approving trust agreement to issue bond regarding pension obligation. Recommendations to adopt resolution 2019-25. Ms. Brown?
Yes, I'm going to have Bud Levine, our financial advisor from Wolf Hansen and Company, present this resolution regarding a trust agreement to issue bonds regarding pension obligation. Bud, welcome back. It was a little longer than I think we all thought.
I just have to tell you that the last time I was at a meeting, this actually went longer. It was with the city of Porterville, and I was last on the agenda.
Folks, if we can
so
keep
when I finally got up there, it was an item that everybody was in favor of. I walked up and somebody said, "So moved," and then there was a second.
Hold on, Bud.
Yeah, sure.
If we can get folks, if you want to keep the discussions outside, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Go ahead, Bud.
Thank you. Okay. Well, we're back here to talk now about the second item that we discussed at the January meeting and again at the ad hoc committee meeting, which is the issuing of pension obligation bonds to pay off your CalPERS unfunded. I've got a similar presentation to what we did before, but I think everybody has pretty much seen a lot of this. So why don't I do a quick summary of the first 3 or 4 pages. Then I'm going to have Rob, for his first time talking to a city council, go over the numbers that he had put together on the CalPERS obligation, and then I'll talk about the savings, and then we can talk about what we need passed today.
Or you can just go straight to the savings.
Oh, I'm going to go through the savings. Absolutely. That's saving the best for that. Pretty much what we're really talking about are the CalPERS unfunded liabilities. As we all know, CalPERS provides the ability for cities to place money with CalPERS, both from the employees and from the city, that is then combined into a pool and invested by CalPERS. And CalPERS estimates the rate of return that they need to receive in combination with the money that is being contributed every year so that there's sufficient funds to pay retirement benefits when your employees that are covered under that plan retire. That's the basic concept. Now, how do unfunded liabilities occur? Unfunded liabilities occur when CalPERS, in operating the investment part of the portfolio, receive a return less than that 7% benchmark. And the amount that they receive less than the 7% is then added up every year, and it becomes the unfunded liability that any city is going to be obligated for. When this continues for a sufficiently long period of time to where the amount becomes a significant amount, then CalPERS provides, in addition to the obligation to continue to make the annual payments that are made to cover your employee benefits, CalPERS gives an amortization schedule for that unfunded liability. They also add 7% to that amortization schedule. It's like a debt service on a bond. It's the amount that the city, in addition to their normal contributions, has to pay every year. And I will turn that, and so at that point, the city has several different options. They can do nothing, in which case that the unfunded liability continues to grow. They can pay the amortization schedule the way CalPERS has requested. At some point, that may become more than a request. It will probably become mandatory. Or they can find other sources of funds to contribute to pay down that unfunded. Or lastly, they can issue bonds, like we are suggesting here, to take the proceeds of those bonds, pay off the unfunded, and hopefully, I mean, they would do that if they're paying a rate of interest that is reasonably or significantly lower than the 7%. I'm going to have Rob go over what your numbers are here at Marysville.
So the city of Marysville has 7 retirement plans with CalPERS, 4 of which are being considered in this refunding. They amount to about $14.1 million currently in unfunded outstanding actuarial liabilities. For fiscal year 2019-20, the aggregate payments of these 4 plans is about $1.1 million. It's a little bit small, but if you can see, each of the plans has its own payment schedule, and when you total them up on the first line, you'll see the $1.1 million, and then it's amortized over about 28 years to pay off this balance.
You might want to point out the total there, if you can read that.
The total is about $27.5 million right now in total payments on the UAL under the current CalPERS amortization schedule.
Okay, I'll take over from here. So what is being proposed is not a COP, not a lease, just a straight bond issued by the general fund. Now, how can you do that? You're supposed to go to a vote of the public in order to issue an obligation against the general fund. However, there are several exceptions to that, and one of them is to pledge the general fund to pay a state obligation that the city may have. This is considered a state obligation or a government obligation. In order to verify that, in order to issue a bond against the general fund, based on that, there's a validation suit that must be filed. The validation suit is simply the city basically suing themselves to see if there are any objections to the plan of pledging the general fund. Your city attorney would file the actual suit. The bond counsel, who has already done this, would prepare all of the papers that are necessary for the filing. After a period of time, which normally takes about 90 days, the judge will issue an order approving the issuing of the obligation against the general fund. Actually, that would happen in about 60 days. There would be an additional 30-day appeal period, and then the bonds could be issued. So let's take a look at what these bonds would look like in order to pay off the $14 million. We would issue, right now the estimate is $14,570,000 in bonds. We have $106,000 in there in a negative. That's because we've been told by the underwriter that in this kind of a market, you have to issue bonds with a slight discount where you actually issue them at a coupon rate but they're sold for slightly less than the par amount of the bond, which creates a little bit higher yield. That's all bond speak. But the bottom line is you deduct the $106,000 from the par amount of the bonds, so you would have a net proceeds estimated of $14,463,000. You notice then there are the same four plan obligations that Rob had pointed out earlier, totaling the $14,135,000. That would be the use of the funds. You would sell $14,463,000. $14,135,000 would be set aside or sent to CalPERS to pay off the unfunded liability, and then the balance would be used to pay the cost of issuance and the underwriting fee, which would total estimated now at $328,000. If you look at the next page, that's that same page of the required disclosures that we have to make a best estimate, and we are estimating based on the input that we've had from the underwriter and from our own analysis of the marketplace right now, that the interest rate, remember the interest rate on the unfunded is 7%, these would be issued at 4.30% based on the market conditions today. And we have that cost of issuance of $227,000 and the underwriter's discount of $100,824, which is, both of these are very low numbers for a deal of this size. Your net proceeds would be $14,135,000. You notice the sum of all payments is $21,347,000. We just saw that the sum of your amortization on your CalPERS is around $27 million. And we had talked earlier on the B Street lease how the net present value of savings, you're going to see that in a minute when we talk about the debt management policy, should be around 3%. This is 20%. So this is far, far in excess of the requirement. Following what we had agreed to on the ad hoc committee meeting, here's our estimate right now of the cost of issuance, and you can see the breakdown on that. You'll notice one figure that I want to draw your attention to, the miscellaneous figure. There may be some other expenses that may incur through consultants in the process of doing these bonds. I don't think there will be, but we always like to set aside some. It was almost a rounding number. We have a very big number in there at $56,000. It normally would be $5,000 or $6,000. So that actually, when we get ready to do the bonds, after the validation suit, that would reduce the size of the bond issue if there's no additional costs that are involved. Sure.
Is the cost of the validation suit in these figures?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. If you'll notice, we've set aside, and we'll talk to the city attorney about that. We estimate around $5,000. That we have a miscellaneous number. If the number needs to be more, if there's excess work that maybe hasn't been anticipated, that would cover that. You'll notice the bond counsel fee of $60,000. That includes the work that they're doing, not only for issuing the bonds, but also doing all the validation work. So there's no additional cost.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick question.
Sure.
We pay off this unfunded liability with these bonds.
Yes.
Now, what happens to the retirees from this point on? Do we generate another unfunded liability?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. I think we talked a little bit about that last time, but we can talk about it even more now. Basically, this would bring your unfunded liability as it stands right now, based on this last year. Now, we'll even get an updated number for 2018, so that number may change. But the bottom line is, once the bonds are issued and the proceeds come in, it pays it down as close to zero as we can. Now, starting next year, they're continuing to invest the money, and if they again have below 7%, you would start a new chain of unfunded liabilities, but it would be far below where your 14 million is. Now, on the other side, if there's more than 7%, and occasionally, I shouldn't say that, they can gain, a larger return than the 7%. that would go to the positive side of Marysville account. So let's say we pay this off and it's zero, and now CalPERS earns 9% in any given year. And that would be a 2% above the 7%. That 2% applied to the balance in the account, which could be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, sits there now for the next year as a positive. So if then in the next year they're below and there's a negative 400,000, you don't have to pay that. That's already sitting there from the CalPERS positive. But I want to point out that over the last 15, 20 years, the net has been 14 million negative. So that's kind of the reality of the situation. But yes, we're not paying forward on this. However, one thing to take a look at, and now let's take a look at this debt service savings schedule. Actually, this is the debt service schedule of the new bonds. You'll notice the interest rates go out to about a 4.63, but they started at 2.47. That produces an average of about that 4.30 that I was indicating earlier. But you'll see that's the debt service schedule there shows 21,347 against the CalPERS. Now, if you look at you've got the right one up there now. On the left-hand side is the CalPERS amortization schedule. You notice that that's all of a sudden down to 26 million where it was 27 on the other page. That's because I didn't want to confuse anybody that would have looked at our January numbers. There was 27 million in January because we were including the 2019 payment. That's now passed. You're in the process of making that payment. So the actual amount starting from this point on would be more like 26 million in the total payments. But you notice the savings in yellow, 4,000,009 over the life of the remaining term. That equals, this is not extending the term. This is the same term that the city would be paying to CalPERS over that same period of time. This would save 4.9 million and around 200,000 a year. One of the things that we would suggest, but again, this is a city decision, would be to maybe take some or as much as you feel comfortable of that excess every year and put it in a reserve. I know you've had presentations about the 115 reserve, where you can put it in a reserve that is locked up, only can be used to pay future unfundeds. This would be, and what's recommended is if you have a lot of excess reserves lying around. Most cities don't have the luxury of having that because of all the demands on the city. So this would be an internally generated excess that if you do nothing, you're not going to have that. By doing this bond issue, you're going to be generating a couple $100,000 a year. Putting part or all of that, depending on what the needs of the city are, into a reserve that you manage, and then if you do have those future unfundeds that you are concerned about, you now have a source of funds that's been building up. Maybe 5 years down the road, you have $1 million, $1.2 million in that.
That's not today's vote.
Pardon me?
That's not today's vote. That's not today's vote. We're not voting on that reserve.
Oh, no.
So let's move on.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Sure, understood. Yeah, that's just a suggestion, absolutely. Okay, anyway, so that's really the presentation at this point.
Thank you.
Now, what you would be doing now is by approving this resolution is to hire the team, authorize moving forward, approving the bond purchase agreement and the trust agreement, and approving the issuance of the validation suit.
Thank you. Questions? Comments from the public? Go ahead, Kelly. Please come up to the podium.
I just didn't hear, I heard him say that issuance was at 4% if it was a fixed rate.
Yes.
What kind of?
Yes. By the way, we would never, ever, and somebody shoot me if I do, recommend a variable rate bond in this economy or almost any economy. So, anyway.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments from?
I'll just comment again after we sat through the presentation that was very extensive, especially during
But there was the possibility that they were going to lower the target, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, they've actually done that. 2 or 3 years ago, it was at 7.5. And they have, 5 years ago, they have worked down to 7. The estimates they have going forward is that they're pretty sure that 7 is the number that's going to be used. There's a possibility it could go to 6 3/4. To think of the possibility of going to 4, also think about it, if it goes to 4, imagine what the negatives are going to be for the pool at the end.
Yeah.
So, I would say that that's a pretty safe spread of where rates are now, that the CalPERS adjustment will probably not
So
that.
just bottom line, with what we sat through and the extensive explanation of it all, it seemed to only make total sense to move forward with this.
I appreciate the committee's work on this and for the time that it took to go through it. Any other comments from the public? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve resolution 2019-25.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Buttercoli, second by the Vice Mayor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. One more. Are we almost there?
Yep,
I think I'm supposed to stay here.
Yes.
you are.
Now we're here to look at Resolution 1926, approving a debt management policy and disclosure procedures for public debt issuance and related disclosure obligations. We'll just let Bud continue if that's all right, or staff want to make an introduction? Okay.
Go for it, Bud.
Yeah,
Mr.
okay. This one is pretty straightforward because it really is a requirement. Every city, for good business reasons, should have a debt management policy, but the state has now literally mandated it, and our industry has pretty much followed suit to where you would have difficulty getting an underwriter or a placement agent to place the bonds or underwrite the bonds if your city did not have a debt management policy that met the requirements of the Senate Bill 1029, which was the bill that established that. The debt management policy simply lays out all of the bases of how you should issue debt, why you should issue debt, what type of debt you should issue, and what the interest rate variations should be, what type of procedures you put in place for determining when you're going to issue debt. After you issue debt, it describes what your continuing disclosure, also describes your disclosure requirements when you're issuing the debt, and what your continuing disclosure requirements are in keeping the investing public and the state regulators up to date on how things are going. Pretty straightforward policy. I'll point out a couple of key things. Very negative on issuing, as we just talked about, variable rate debt, unless there's an incredibly good reason to do so, which would be determined with input from advisors like me or other consultants, and what the council would like to do. The use of derivatives is always discouraged. That's where you have third-party guarantees of where interest rates are going to be stopped at or controlled. There's a big derivative risk. There's big secondary and counterparty risk from what happened in the 2007. Anybody remember Lehman Brothers, who provided most of the derivative products that were used in the municipal business?
Did anyone go to jail?
Pardon me?
No one went to jail.
Exactly. I know.
All right.
I know. So anyway, one of the things that we have in here that is a standard, and it's not an absolute bottom line number, but when you're doing a refunding, it is recommended that the net present value, remember I pointed that out on both the 2011 and on the pension OBS, should be at least 3%. That means that the net value dollars should, if you multiply that times the bonds you are refunding, should equal at least 3%. So on a $6 million issue, you should have $180,000 in savings. So anyway, that's really That's really it. You really need to pass this because it would be very difficult to do the bond issues that we're talking about, both the lease and the pension obligation bonds, if you don't have a policy in place and have the continuing disclosure requirements as part of that. Now, this policy can be changed. There are provisions in here that if there are circumstances that really require that a particular provision be overlooked or not necessarily mandated, that can be a vote of the council as long as there are good reasons to do so.
Thank you. Any questions for staff, from city council?
Who's going to do this policy, Mayor?
It's already done. We just
It's
have to
in there.
approve
It
it.
is, okay.
Yeah, it's right behind the
Wow.
the resolution.
I guess I should have read
We've
that
had-
there.
Yeah.
Kind of told
It's
them
already
that's
in
what-
here.
Yeah, we have both, we arranged for both the debt management policy and the continuing disclosure
Okay.
procedures
Got
are
it.
in there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Seeing none, any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-26. Motion by Vice Mayor. Second by Councilmember Buttercawoli. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved with a vote of 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bud.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the work.
Do I get an A for the class?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir? We are going to have 2 minutes to take a break before we go to closed session. Hold on, sir. Hold on. Any committee reports? Nope. I can tell you that I will be making a presentation next week for a few minutes on my trip to DC and cap to cap, so you guys are informed of the benefits that we received.
What, you're not gonna do that tonight?
Why don't we just do it now?
Any council correspondence?
Yes.
Yes.
We received a letter regarding the garden
Meeting's still going, please.
the garden coordinator change at the Marysville Community Garden to Tracy Jacobson. And then there were 2 letters received regarding the 5th Street project from Ruth Mickelson and Michael Schuster, and then Stephen Whitmarsh.
Thank you. Any quarterly, oh no, we're off that one. Council comments, Mr. Buttercawoli. No. Mr. Simmons.
I'm so proud to be here.
Mr. Hudson.
Good.
Vice Mayor. Yes.
I didn't hear a word you said.
Well, I just want to say congratulations to our new staff from the police department, fire department.
Yeah.
And
forgot
congratulations.
about it so long
And we saved a lot of money today. We made a lot of decisions. We listened to the public. I think we should be very proud of this council on the way we make decisions. So thank you. So with that, I'd like to move to item 13, closed session pursuant to Government Code, Section 54957.6.
Are we allowed 2 minutes?
And then, yeah.
Oh, we still closed session.
There's no reportable action. Staff have been given direction. I'll adjourn to a regular meeting of the City Council on May 21st, 6 p.m.
Yeah, I thought you did.
That's why I'm proposing it.
Bill wants you to know he's on his way.
Too late, Bill, meeting's over. Don't walk up the steps. Oh, come on, we gotta go.
I guess the camera's off. I don't care if you don't see my face.
might still be rolling, I don't know.
Look at that man out there. Look at that.
Reopen it. Roll call.
Mr. Simmons?
Here.
Mr. Buttercavoli? Here. Ms. McKenzie? Mr. Hudson?
Aye.
Mr. Samayoa?
Here. Staff, describe the action, describe what we're voting on.
It's right here.
Okay, pursuant to Government Code Section 549.7-.6.
Just read it.
Okay.
So the action we're asking is to entertain a motion to approve the side letter amending the MOU between the City of Marysville and the aforementioned employee organization bargaining units. Is there a motion?
Second.
Motion by Buttercavoli, second by Hudson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With that, I'd like to adjourn again to our May 21st meeting.